This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate second and final part of What If Kid Naruto meets Minato, who was resurrected by Kami. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Naruto remarked as he ran, "Sasuke, Sai, we need to figure out how to avoid these early morning rituals." Sasuke replied, "There's no need to tell me." He gestured over his shoulder and said, "Tell them." "Why am I part of this? I'm not part of an important clan or the son of a Kage," Sai replied. Naruto informed him, "Because they think you are cool and handsome." To get away from the scourge of their 8-year-old lives, the three boys were racing through Konoha's streets. Fangirls. They had developed the habit of stalking the three, nagging them for dates, or simply annoying them by yelling absurd things. Well, there is one positive thing. After today, those fangirls who are unsuited to be kunoichi will be dropped out of the program together with those who don't meet the standards of the academy, Sai said with optimism. "Yes. I just hope this will eliminate the worst of them. I can't stand another of Sakura's rants about how we are destined to be together," Sasuke responded with disdain. She will probably stay. Unfortunately, she has improved a lot since we started academy, as she didn't want to be outdone by Ino, Hinata and Mai. She is nothing special with her physical abilities, but she will be able to meet the standards. But some of the others will be dropped, Naruto thought. Sasuke's head fell down. He sincerely hoped to get rid of his most obnoxious fangirls. However, it didn't seem to be meant to be. "Why can't more kunoichi be like Mai?" he inquired. "Because for some bizarre reason girls are illogical," Sai said. "They want to be ninjas because they think there is a lot of prestige and they have the chance to meet their Prince Charming." "Yes, and it is complete nonsense. As if I would even think to be together with a girl who chases me through the village," said Naruto. There was a loud squeal. Naruto yelled, "Shit, they're getting closer." "We're almost there," Sai declared. "Only a few hundred yards. I can see the gates of the academy." They finally arrived at the academy, where the girls were compelled to stop their foolish behavior or face reprimands from the teachers, so they sped up one last time. In some way, the three of them gasped, but they soon recovered. The only benefit of those runs away from the fangirls was that they were gradually getting faster and more resilient. They noticed their three female friends standing close to the gate, trying hard not to laugh at their situation, when they looked up. Naruto pouted and remarked, "This is not funny." "Yes, it is," Ino said. "You should see your faces." Sasuke mockingly proposed, "If you think it's so funny, we invite you to use a transformation to look like one of us and experience a hunt for yourselves." "Thank you, but no," Mai said. "I'm not that crazy." Hinata shifted to stand beside Naruto while giggling. Naruto inquired, "You too, Hinata-chan? Come on, Naruto-kun. You would also laugh if something was funny." Hinata's confidence has significantly increased over the past 2 years as a result of her consistent training with Mai and Ino. The girls had shared an objective: to finish the first 2 years in the top class. They trained on the academy's training grounds every Saturday morning because they wanted to be good kunoichi. Following the initial hands-on instruction on the various training programs, they intended to enhance their skills, particularly following the first fight between Naruto and Sasuke. Flashback. On either side of the training field were Naruto and Sasuke. Many of the other students had come to witness the battle between the renowned Itachi Uchiha's younger brother and the Hokage's son. Naruto started writing down the rules, saying, "Okay Sasuke, only taijutsu for today." He said, "No problem. Time limit? I think 5 minutes. If we go all out with our fight this will be a long enough time," said Naruto. "If one has the other disabled to continue he wins the fight." "Good. Winner is who wins 2 out of 3 times with a break of 5 minutes between the fights," suggested Sasuke. Naruto said, "Agreed, Sasuke. Are you ready?" "As I can be." After exchanging glances, the two boys assumed their positions. Although they were rough, they were excellent to the other kids there. However, it was evident that both boys had prior training. After a few seconds of waiting, they looked at their opponent. Then Naruto started running in Sasuke's direction. He attempted to strike Sasuke with his fist, but by moving his body to the left, he was able to dodge the blow. Sasuke's kicked Naruto's legs out from under him, but Naruto jumped over them to avoid being hit. Through each other's defense, the two boys were able to deliver some solid blows as they traded blows. They quickly discovered that their odds were almost equal. They smiled. It was enjoyable. The onlookers were impressed. The two demonstrated that they had good reason to be at the top of their respective classes. And the academy had only been open for 2 weeks. Some students understood that they would need to put in a lot of training if they wanted to be able to follow and not fall behind these two. 4 minutes later, Naruto was able to seize Sasuke's arm and quickly twist it, tightening his grip on him from behind. With his second hand positioned at Sasuke's throat to demonstrate his point, Naruto declared, "If we would use kunai, I would win this time, Sasuke." "All right, you win this fight, Naruto, but the next I will win," he replied. Sasuke's arm was released by Naruto. The two boys were perspiring. At the edges of the training area, they drank water from bottles they carried in their backpacks. Sasuke prevailed in the second battle. He pinned Naruto to the ground after deceiving him into attacking. They both had a great time. It was a long and difficult fight, the third and final one. Although they were both a little worn out, Naruto had more endurance. This proved to be the decisive factor in the end because he was a little quicker than Sasuke and kicked Sasuke in the stomach. When Sasuke attempted to stand up, he was behind him to claim his victory, just like in the first fight. Both parties were aware that the opponent might use another trick in a real fight, but they only engaged in taijutsu combat. They had stumbled upon one of Guy Maida's challenges to Kakashi on the way home. For a particular jutsu, he had proposed a hand-seal speed competition. Ultimately, Naruto and Sasuke concurred that the man was a little crazy and that neither of them would ever wear a green spandex suit, even if they were rivals. It was humiliating. End of flashback. Naruto decided it was time for a counter after Hinata continued to tease him. He started to gripe, "Hinata-chan is so mean." He feigned tears on Sei's shoulder and said, "Sai, she doesn't like me anymore." Mai rolled their eyes as did Ino. Naruto's childlike side occasionally surfaced, even when he was completely focused on a task. Naturally, they were aware that this was all a ruse. Hinata was aware as well, but her feelings for him made it hard for her to remain composed. She would have responded intelligently if any other boy had attempted something similar, but Naruto prevented her from doing so. However, when Hinata looked at Naruto beggingly, he was unable to refuse her any of her requests for some reason. The puppy eyes no jutsu was something he dreaded. Hinata now won their little game of teasing by using it. "Oh Naruto-kun, how can you say this? I thought our friendship was special. Stop talking like this, please." Naruto's deep blue eyes met Hinata's large lavender eyes. A major accomplishment for Ino and Mai, who had put in a lot of effort to enable Hinata to accomplish this. Naruto started to perspire. Why did girls always succeed in attracting boys using this method? Sasuke grinned and said, "Face it, Naruto, your girlfriend has you wrap around her pinky." That caused them both to stumble. Naruto hurriedly declared, "Sasuke, we aren't a couple. We are just friends." "And why are you so red if you two are just friends?" And Hinata also. Ino assumed control. Since they could all see that Hinata and Naruto were starting to feel something for one another, they all enjoyed making fun of them. Additionally, Ino and Mai, Hinata's closest friends, made sure to ward off any possible competitors for Naruto's affections. Fangirls were excluded. He hated them. Naruto and Hinata were spared more taunts thanks to the bell. To get to their different classes, they parted ways. Everyone in their year wanted to do well on the test, which would begin in a few minutes. Shikamaru was the exception, but even he worked hard at his training because he feared his mother's wrath. Even though it was only bothersome. Renzo was waiting for them in front of their typical classroom. He started talking when everyone was present. "Today is the first of your evaluation tests. From now on, you will be tested every 6 months to gauge your progress. Focus and give it your all, and you will become a worthy Konoha ninja. You all know that you need to earn a certain number of points to be allowed to stay at the academy, so give it your all. The results will be revealed in a week, so in the meantime, you have free time. The test will consist of 5 parts. The first is a written section in which you will be given a situation and asked to solve the problem. We will use their classrooms to ensure that no one tries to cheat on the written test, so the first half of our class will remain here, and the second will be in the neighbor room. You know where to go. The second will be an accuracy test for throwing weapons on stationary targets, using kunai and shuriken. The third will be a taijutsu test against one of the teachers. The fourth will be a chakra control test, in which you must demonstrate your ability to build traps using the tools you have been given. The 5th and 6th year students will have their tests tomorrow." After giving a nod, the students left for their individual classrooms. Shikamaru was in the second half of the class, while Naruto was in the first. Each student sat down, leaving enough room for the next one. There would be no way for anyone to cheat. After creating a shadow clone, Renzo sent it to the adjacent room. He then distributed the written exams with the blank side facing up. For this test you have 45 minutes to finish it. You will start in exactly 5 minutes. For this test there are the following rules. Cheating will lead to failure of the test. This is not an information gathering test but a test of your analytical abilities and the ability to solve problems. You have to get at least 60% to pass this part. Your grades depend on the depth of your analysis and the found solutions. Right. Questions? Nobody had any inquiries. They had tested similarly in the past. They were aware of the guidelines. To find out when the test started, Renzo glanced at the wall clock. Start was his command, and the kids turned the papers and started reading the directions. Protecting a caravan of civilians is your mission. They deliver high-end products to affluent customers. The merchants anticipate that bandits will attempt to steal their goods, and the mission has a C rank. To guard the caravan, the Hokage dispatched 2 teams of 1 Jonin and 3 Genin each. One team is dedicated to combat, and another to tracking. Which team placement would be most advantageous for the mission's success? For night shifts, what would be the ideal schedule? To best protect the caravan, make a list of both teams' typical skills and incorporate them into your plan. In the event that 30 bandits launched an attack, which tactic would probably yield the best results? List the best candidates in your class for the 6 Genin positions and explain why. Everyone began responding to the scenario's questions. The children were given a difficult task, but they had to learn how to plan. It would be easier if they could imagine which of their classmates would be most qualified for each position because they would already be familiar with each other's skills. That was the majority of them. Deception was a skill that a skilled shinobi could employ, and Danzo's students were experts at it. As a result, they did not demonstrate their full potential. Everyone was instructed to stop writing and turn in their papers after 45 minutes. They were escorted outdoors, where their year's fellows would be. The second part was explained by Shimato, the former 2A's sensei. Well, as you all were told, this part consists of weapon accuracy. We have 20 targets over there in a distance of 15 to 25 yards. Each target has 5 areas where you get points if you hit them. 2 of the areas give 2 points for a hit as they represent vital areas on a person. The others give 1 point. Outside these areas you won't get any points. You have 10 kunai and 10 shuriken. We will proceed in alphabetical order. First is Aburame Shino. Shino took his weapons, stepped forward, and moved to the line from which he would attempt to strike his targets. If one was successful in hitting every important area, the maximum score was 40 points. Shino started to hurl his weapons. He was able to get 7 hits with shuriken, 2 of which were in vital areas, and 6 hits with kunais, 1 of which was in a vital area. He received 16 points as a result. Choji came next. With just 1 crucial hit, he scored 14 points. Minami, a member of his clan, scored 15 points with 5 shuriken, 3 of which were in crucial areas, and 7 kunai hits, none of which were in a vital area. Nearer targets accounted for the majority of the crucial hits that anyone was able to score. To date, only Shino had managed to hit a single critical point on a target that was farther away. And so it continued. When Haruno Sakura was on the list, she surprised some by scoring 12 points on closer targets without taking a crucial hit. Next, Hyuga Hinata was declared by Shimato Sensei. Taking her weapons, Hinata prepared herself. The majority of her targets were hit when she released her kunai. On crucial points, 8 hits A3. Then the shuriken appeared. This time, she received 8 hits, including 2 on farther targets, and 4 vitals. She receives 23 points. So far, that was the highest score. Naruto mouthed the words, "Well done," and grinned at her when she returned. She was quite pleased with the outcome. It continued, and then Mai's turn came. She threw her kunai and prepared. 5 of the 9 hits were in key areas. A few of the other class's pupils were stunned. Next up was Shuriken, who received 3 crucial points and 8 hits. She received 25 points. Naruto came next. When he took his place at the line, he inhaled to calm himself and focus. One target after another was struck by the kunai as he started throwing. The third year students were stunned when the shuriken flew. 10 of the 20 hits are in critical areas. Naruto receives 30 points. He smiled with pride. He benefited from his frequent training with Shizune in terms of accuracy. Shizune specialized in throwing or launching senbons, which were far more challenging to use than shuriken or kunai because you had to hit precisely to get the desired results. Medics were aware of which points would result in fatal wounds. As the test progressed, the majority of students received respectable scores. Next came Sasuke's turn. He would demonstrate that he did not support Naruto. He had put a lot of effort into his training, and Itachi had taught him some tricks. In a blur, his weapons flew. He received 20 hits, but 11 of them were crucial, just like Naruto. More than Naruto by 1 point. Ino came last. She received 18 points. She had 4 crucial hits with the shuriken and 2 with the kunai, and each hit 6 times. They proceeded to the trap test. Naruto was an expert at this. By now, everyone was afraid of his traps. To make things easier for the proctors, he was only allowed to use the pre-established tools. They hoped so, anyway. After giving everyone 15 minutes to get ready, the proctors put each student's traps to the test. Because there weren't many places to set up the traps, this section took 2 hours. As anticipated, Naruto dominated this section, but Shikamaru surprised everyone by excelling in it. It might have been because he enjoyed planning a lot of steps in advance. Next was taijutsu. For one of the 4 styles taught at the academy, each student was required to present the katas they had learned. When Tsunade discovered that the academy only taught one style, she objected. Since children differ in their physical characteristics, it would be beneficial if there were more styles available for them to select from. They needed more teachers for the various styles, so Minato had accepted her logic even if it meant doing more work. However, it paid off. They then engaged in combat with the teachers. This was where Hinata excelled, followed by Sasuke and Choji. Although Naruto was good, his strongest skill was not taijutsu. The exercises for chakra control came last. They had to demonstrate the water rippling and leaf balancing exercises. How well the leaf hovered above their heads, whether the distance changed over time, and whether they ran out of chakra were all used to grade their leaf balancing. If someone could balance more than one leaf, they could earn extra points. Sakura did well on this test after Yakumo did, but Sakura struggled as it went on. It was easier for her to control because she had very little chakra to work with. Naruto's enormous reserves caused him the most trouble. However, he completed the exercise and even managed to balance 3 leaves. However, he was unable to maintain distance. An exercise that served as a prelude to the later taught water walking was water rippling. Each person was given a basin filled with water, and they were required to dip their hand into it. To make gentle water circles, they had to pulse their chakra at regular intervals after the water had calmed down. If there was not enough chakra, the circles wouldn't form. If there was too much, the water would splash out of the basin. After this exercise, Naruto was obviously a little wet. It was very hard for him to release small amounts of chakra. Hinata dominated this section because the Juken in her family's taijutsu style relied on the hands and fingers continuously releasing chakra. Following everyone's completion, the teachers wished them a pleasant week. Naruto was unexpectedly attacked with blunted kunai on their way home. He leapt aside and used his own kunai to deflect the weapons. He turned in the direction of the attack's origin as soon as he realized who was responsible. Yugito Ni sat in a tree branch and laughed heartily, just as he had feared. She declared with pride, "I got you good midget." "Yugito, that's not funny," objected Naruto. "Yes it is. You should have seen your hilarious jump. You should train more midget or you never will be a great ninja." Hinata was upset. Why did this girl attack Naruto so often? Would she not be able to leave him alone? Oh, and look at who is accompanying the midget. The high and mighty Hyuga and Yamanaka princesses and the drawing dumbass. Where did you leave your other 2 cronies, midget? The duck butt hair and the tomboy? Naruto snapped, "Stop insulting my friend's cat." "But it is fun." "Why should I stop? You can't beat me, so what will you do? Run to daddy and tell him that the big bad kitty has been mean?" "Ooh, I'm so scared," she chuckled at him. After retrieving an object from his weapon pouch, Naruto hurled it at Yugito. She avoided it idly without giving it another glance. "Come on, your aim has seen better days, midget, or has the test been too strenuous for you?" Naruto smiled. He focused his chakra and made a hand seal. There was a small explosion next to Yugito. The younger ones could see Yugito repeatedly sneezing after the smoke cleared. "Damn midget, what is this?" "My newest seal. A pepper bomb. It works like a normal smoke tag, but instead of the normal smoke pepper is released and makes you sneeze. This point is mine, Kitty-chan, see you around." Naruto and the others then departed from the girl who was sneezing. A short while later, someone else touched down beside Yugito. The newcomer reprimanded her, asking, "What have I told you about your attacks on Naruto?" In response, Yugito said, "To plan them better, Enko.ne-chan. Right, and to never underestimate him. He might be 3 years your junior, but he is cunning and has a lot of tricks. So the next time you try to attack him, make sure to remember this. And we have to work on your throwing speed. He is getting better at dodging." "Yes, Ne-chan, I will remember it." She tried to avoid Enko ruffling her hair. "Good girl. Come on, let's get some dango. You have to be in top form tomorrow when you have your evaluation. You want to keep your place as top student of your year, right?" replied she. "Of course. I will show them what I am made of." That's my younger sister, Anko declared with pride. Naruto ate his breakfast while seated at the kitchen table. His father, on the other hand, was sipping tea and reading a report that contained crucial details for a meeting he had this morning. Naruto was aware that a significant event was occurring. For the past 2 years, Anbu has been visiting the mansion to provide his father with case updates. Since his father would tell him if he was permitted to know, Naruto knew better than to ask him what was happening. Minato finally lowered his report and turned to face his son. He took great pride in him. He had put in a lot of effort and greatly enhanced his abilities. He would receive the findings of his initial assessment today. Naruto had been on vacation for the past week. He had spent 2 days camping in the forest on the estate's grounds, playing and swimming with his friends. For a change, he urged his son to be a kid. He was also pleased to learn that Naruto had close companions. "And how do you feel about getting your results today?" replied Minato. "I'm excited. I'm curious where I was ranked. From there I can start and work on my abilities. I'm pretty sure that I managed to be under the first third of my year. Except the chakra control test, the other tests went quite well," replied Naruto. Minato gave a small laugh. Since Naruto had enormous reserves of chakra and found it difficult to control them, he had predicted that this section of the test would be the most difficult for him. "I'm sure you did. By the way, when you are finished with school today, come to the tower. I have to work long today and I want to know your results when you get them." "You don't know already?" a startled Naruto inquired. "No, with the new system we have to get the village working. I only get to see the overall results after the students have been told. It's not critical knowledge for me, so I am not informed immediately. The only exception are the results of the graduates, as I am in charge of the composition of the genin teams. From the last evaluation test in the middle of the 6th year to the graduation, I get constant updates of the students' performances." "I see. Did you already think about which extra courses you will take this year?" replied Minato. "Yes, I will take weapons, advanced traps and an advanced taijutsu class." Minato asked, "Why did you choose those?" He had been fairly certain that Naruto would want to demonstrate his extremely skilled abilities by using Fuinjutsu. "Well, Danzo-sensei and you hammered into my head that a ninja's greatest tool is deception and that a good shinobi shouldn't show of all his abilities. Therefore I decided not to go to the Fuinjutsu classes, as I am way ahead of everybody else in this field. And I doubt I could learn more from academy teachers than from one of the best seal masters in the world, Daddy," laughed Naruto. "For the others I want to improve my taijutsu. It's good, but I could be better. If I want to become Hokage one day, I have to be proficient with every field, and taijutsu is one of the most basic. Weapons I think will be useful, as I could surprise an opponent with them. If I learned to handle a weapon and seal it somewhere at my body or my clothes, nobody would know and I had an ace in my sleeve. And the sooner I start with this training, the better I will be at the end of the academy." "Very good, Naruto. You know, a lot of people wouldn't believe that you are just 8 years old the way you behave and speak. Hey, I'm just awesome, and I learned from the best, Daddy." It was accurate. Minato, Danzo, Tsunade, Jiraiya, Kakashi, and Shizune were all teaching Naruto. When it came to peeping, Jiraiya in particular had a childish attitude, but when necessary, he could be serious. Throughout their training, Danzo never made jokes and didn't put up with it from his pupils. Minato could be all business, but he loved playing practical jokes and confusing people. Additionally, Naruto was taught proper etiquette by Tsunade and Shizune. He was a prince of Whirlpool and the heir to 2 clans. For his age, he was naturally quite mature. "I'm very proud of you, son. Now get ready for the academy. I will accompany you on the way before I go to the tower." With a cheer, Naruto hurried to retrieve his belongings from his room. They had an uneventful journey. Many villagers welcomed them, and his fangirls were afraid to approach him too closely while his father was with him. He fervently hoped that the cases that had no chance of survival would now be dropped. He enjoyed being recognized by others, but he detested this foolishness. They should stay civilians if their goal was to fall in love with boys rather than train. A woman made an attempt to flirt with his father halfway to the academy, but he graciously turned her down. "I wish you luck, lady. Mommy is still loved by Daddy. He has no desire to be with another woman. In particular, no woman like you. He's capable of much more," Naruto thought. It was accurate. Jiraiya believed it was extremely wrong for Minato to live his entire life alone, and he couldn't bring himself to let go of Kushina, even if many people tried to convince him to find another woman. No one had loved her as much as he had. He was deeply hurt by her passing. He couldn't believe he could love another woman as much as he had loved Kushina, but it had somewhat healed, especially since Naruto had brought happiness into his life. Thus, he gave his son his undivided love. For him, that was sufficient. Naruto also required a great deal of care. His fear of being left alone was one of his few early childhood issues. He could spend some time by himself, but if it were for an extended period of time, he would get anxious. Naruto behaved appropriately and understood his responsibilities as the Hokage, but he always found it difficult to give someone else his full attention, particularly when he wanted his father all to himself. Minato made an effort to dedicate at least the weekend afternoons to his son. And to have fun, not to train. Naruto already had enough training. They arrived at the academy. Minato grinned when Naruto saw his friends. "Okay Naruto. Good luck for your results. I await you later at the tower," he hugged him. "Yes daddy. I will make you proud of me." Minato vanished in a cloud of smoke using a Shunshin no jutsu, saying, "I already am Naruto. Have a nice day." Naruto approached his companions. They talked about their test and made predictions about which students would do best. It's hard to say. We don't have a clue about the written part, and the results of the trap building were also not really announced, Sai replied. We know that Sasuke was best at the weapon throwing part, closely followed by Naruto. He also was second best in taijutsu after Hinata, who was fourth in throwing. Hinata aced the second chakra control exercise, which Naruto messed up, but he was best at trap building. I think it will be one of the three. I'm just glad none of you three has a superiority complex. I don't want to imagine what would happen if you would think everybody was just a hindrance for you, Mai said with a shiver. Well, good thing that we have each other to get humbling defeats from time to time. I know I tend to boast my abilities if I don't get a reality check sometimes, said Naruto. Sasuke gave a nod. His issue was the same. The idea that the Uchiha clan was better than everyone else was still held by some of the older Uchihas. Fools that relied only on their Sharingan. Sasuke was already terrified that the eye would have the unintended consequence of making people stupid. It provided a plausible justification for the foolish schemes to try to seize Konoha when he was just 3 years old. However, Itachi had assured him that he would be safe if he simply handled the Sharingan eye like any other Tula, albeit a very strong one. All Sasuke could do was hope his brother was correct. All of the third year students were instructed to gather in the largest classroom of the year when the bell rang. In front of the room, their 3 former teachers stood patiently while they waited for everyone to calm down. All of these kids would never again be together in this manner. Many of the children had fallen short of the academy's standards. They would now pay for their indolence or fangirl behavior because they had disregarded their teachers' warnings. I want to start by saying that teaching you all was a pleasant experience, Renzo said. Most of you have put their best effort in their training and have qualified to continue their studies at the academy and gained the privilege to learn some more advanced techniques to become good ninjas. But some of you ignored our continued warnings to quit their stupid behavior. Those will be leaving the academy today. You will get application forms for civilian schools and can learn another profession for your further life. Some kids were in disbelief. They had not anticipated that the teachers would actually face repercussions. Shimato went on. Additionally to the evaluation tests yesterday, there are 2 more components that decide if you will be able to continue here. Ninja life is a life where you are always confronted with death. Therefore, a sloppy attitude will lead to you being killed in the field. This Konoha will not allow. It is unavoidable that ninjas die when they do their duties, but it is avoidable to send idiots into the field who think they will be special because they can do a few flashy jutsus. Those are the first to die. We have the advantage of current peace, but this peace is fragile and only those who are able to take their profession serious will survive and become ninjas. He examined the kids. To demonstrate that they took this life seriously, some of their eyes blazed with resolve. The 2 additional components are determination in training and attitude towards your comrades. We ninjas in Konoha value our comrades higher than any other nation because they are all that is between us and the secure death at our enemies' hands. It is said that a team is only as strong as its weakest link, but it is also true that a team that works well together will be unproportionally stronger than the sum of the abilities of the single teammates. If you don't value your comrades highly, you hurt yourself. Always remember this. The B-class teacher, Akira, stated, "We will now begin with those who did not achieve the desired results and hand them their application forms for the civilian schools." He started reading the names one by one. 15 names in all were called. The fact that they couldn't stay at the academy made the kids unhappy. Some were sensible, and maybe a little relieved that they wouldn't have to face death over and over again. Additionally to these 15, we have 5 children who didn't meet the required level but persuaded us with their attitude that they could become ninjas if given a little bit more time and support. Akira read their names as well. You 5 presented us that you really want to become ninjas and trained hard. You respected your comrades and tried your best at the tests. Therefore, Hokage-sama allowed you to stay here for another year to better your abilities. You will be given some remedial classes in the subjects you have most problems. Additionally, we looked up subjects you would probably be good at to add to your studies. Your new class teacher will discuss this with you." The 5 were content. They came from non-ninja families and had made a lot of effort to improve, but they were unable to match the ninja trained kids without parental support. Now to the new classes. We have 50.1 students left at the academy. First, we want to congratulate you to your success, but we also want to warn you not to stop your training. From now on, every 6 months you will be tested for your ranking in the year. The reason for this is to help you to develop to the best of your abilities. It's a good way to find your strengths and weaknesses. But it also allows us to find those who slack in training, and as you have seen, Konoha won't tolerate those who don't take their profession serious in the ranks, reminded them Shimato. We will have 3 classes of 17 students each. They were built based on your ranking in the test. You have the chance to rise through the classes if you improve in the next test. But don't think you are failures if you are in the class with the students with the least points. This class will receive extra support to enable you to reach your full potential. Also, we selected 20 of you who presented the best chakra control to take the medical classes Tsunade-sama will give. Konoha needs good medics, and a good chakra control is necessary for a medic. Now to the classes. Since Akira would be their new class teacher, the kids went with him after Shimato began with the lowest class. They accompanied Renzo after he read the middle class. This class included 2 of Naruto's friends from Danzo's orphanage, Sakura Haruno, Shikamaru Nara, Shoji Akamichi, Kiba Inuzuka, and Yakumo Kurama. Sakura was a little upset that she couldn't attend Sasuke's class, but she knew better than to voice her displeasure. She didn't want to follow her friends who had been sent to civilian schools. She was aware that the written portion was strategy and that she was fortunate to have excellent chakra control. She would have been worse if not for those 2 factors. Kiba expressed his rage loudly that he wasn't in the top class, which he believed was his right. Renzo quickly put him down, telling him that he was the worst of them and that he was fortunate to be in the middle class. His strong taijutsu and weaponry results were the only reason he was admitted. His poor chakra control and attitude toward his allies had earned him a markdown. Shimato would then teach the top class. A few of the findings were unexpected. 5 of the students, who came from non-clan families, took pleasure in the attention they received for beating up some of the clan kids. Shino Aburame, Sasuke Uchiha, Reina Nara, Hitomi Uchiha, Ino Yamanaka, Naruto Namikaze, and Hinata Hyuga were among the clan members. Along with 2 other members of ninja families, Mai Nakasawa and Sai were classmates of their other friends. Shinji Oritate and Wataru Ikonama. Shinji's mother was in the Anbu, and Wataru's father was renowned for his kenjutsu skills. "Well, I think you were curious who were the top scorers in the test, right?" replied Shimato. All of his new students nodded at him. "Then I will tell you. 3rd ranked was Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke received a small round of applause. 2nd ranked was Namikaze Naruto. Naruto received applause as well. Many others questioned who won the top spot if those 2 were defeated for it. 1st ranked was Hyuga Hinata. There was a loud cheer for Hinata, whose face flushed and she made a valiant effort to remain conscious, particularly when Naruto approached and gave her a hug. "Congratulations Hinata, you really deserve this," he replied. If you wonder why Hinata is the top student, the reason is simple. In all of the 7 parts of the test she scored very high, especially in taijutsu, strategy and chakra control. Also, she trained hard from the beginning and helped her comrades to better themselves. Sasuke and Naruto were also good in these parts, but their chakra control was worse. Naruto and Sasuke would have no trouble accepting this. Given their large reserves, they were aware that their control required considerable effort. Hinata appeared to please Mai and Ino. Akunoichi defeating 2 of the top male students for the title of top student wasn't something that happened often. Now we will continue. As you know, you can choose which subjects you want to study during your time at the academy. I hope you gave this some thoughts during your vacation, because I will give you the forms to select your new subjects today. I want them back tomorrow. Shimato explained to them what would be covered in the special classes they would be permitted to take, as well as the regular classes they would have. Since there were no classes today, they were free to depart at lunchtime. Tomorrow would be the first day. Minato attended the council meeting. They needed to talk to Sunagakure about the new treaty. The Kazekage would take his kids to Konoha so they could see another secret village. The youngest son of the Kazekage was reportedly unstable and a vicious killer, which alarmed some of the council members. A man from the new civilian council expressed his doubts, saying, "I think we should ask Kazekage-sama to leave his youngest son at home. It would be too dangerous for the village if he got out of control and started killing innocent people." Minato disagreed, saying, "I think we should let him bring Gaara with him. As our spies told us, Gaara is a Jinchuriki like Naruto and Yugito. It could be possible that if he sees how two other Jinchurikis live and behave that he could get more control over his demon. Suna always had the Ichibi no Shukaku, the weakest of the Biju. From the information I got, I think his seal is way weaker than those of Naruto and Yugito. If we could help him with his seal, we could strengthen our alliance with Suna. Inoichi questioned, but if this all is a trick? If the Cage plans to weaken us by letting Gaara run on a killing spree? I don't think Suna would risk that. Gaara is only 8 years old like Naruto. Even with the Ichibi, any Jonin could get him under control. The weakness of the Ichibi is water, as it makes his sand unusable. And we have enough water around Konoha. If anything goes wrong, I can summon Gamabunta and he can use massive water attacks, Minato assured them. I also hope that if Gaara met Naruto, they could become friends. If I am correct, the only thing the boy needs is somebody who can relate to him and treats him like any other child. The Cage is a hard man. He only thinks about the strength of Suna, not about the people. If he would never have made his own son a Jinchuriki without necessity. Minato did not like these individuals. He had to cooperate with the Cage, though. The council decided that Gaara could go with his father, but if he got out of control, they would have Anbu, who were experts in water attacks, follow him. Naruto was en route to the tower in order to inform his father of his findings. Numerous people greeted him on his way. He and his 4-year-old grandson Konohamaru met the Sandaime near the tower. The young boy was liked by him. He aspired to be as good as Naruto because he viewed him as a big brother. The shout, "Naruto ni san," came from Konohamaru. Through a smile, Naruto said, "Hey Kono, what's up?" "Hello Grandpa," was his greeting to the Sandaime. The Sandaime returned the greeting, "Hello Naruto, already out of the academy?" "Yes, we got our results of the first evaluation tests today, so we only had academy until lunchtime. I'm going to the tower to tell Daddy how I was." The Sandaime said, "That's nice, would you tell me your results?" "Sure. I am ranked second in my year behind Hinata-chan. I really have to work on my chakra control to be able to beat her." "You got beaten by a girl?" Konohamaru questioned incredulously. "Yes, Hinata-chan is a very strong girl. Don't underestimate girls, Kono, you could regret it. Think of my grandmother Tsunade if you don't believe me." Shivering, Konohamaru nodded. If she so desired, the medic Nin could be frightening. Konohamaru said, "Naruto.ni.san, will you play with me?" "Not now, I promised Daddy to come to the tower first thing when I got out of the academy, but we can play this afternoon when you have had your nap." In protest, Konohamaru said, "I don't need a nap. I'm a big boy and big boys don't need naps." "Sure. But I think you will do it because your mother will tell you so. I will come over at 4 approximately, okay?" "Yes ni.san." Naruto ran toward the tower and said, "Okay, bye Kono, bye Grandpa." 10 minutes ago, Minato was back in his office. After a lengthy meeting, he was relieved that it was over. Naruto ought to arrive at any moment to inform him of his findings. He wanted to know how his son had done. The academy gave him the list, but he wanted to hold off on looking at it until Naruto informed him. The door suddenly flew open, letting in a small blur of orange, black, and yellow. "Hey Daddy!" Naruto exclaimed joyfully. Minato smiled and said, "Hello Naruto. You seem happy. Does this mean you got good results on your test?" "You bet Daddy. I was ranked second of the whole year. Only Hinata-chan was better. Shimato-sensei said it was because she was way better in chakra control than Sasuke and me. Sasuke was ranked third." "That's great Naruto. I'm proud of you, you did really good." Naruto flashed a radiant smile. He cherished his father's praise. "I think this is a good reason for a celebration Naruto. I will leave some shadow clones at the office and finish for today. And we will go eat something. Where do you want to go?" "Ichiraku," roared Naruto. Minato laughed. He ought to have been aware. 6 clones started working after he executed the Cage Bun Shin no Jutsu. After escorting Naruto out of the office, Minato informed his secretary that he would not be in the office for the remainder of the day. She merely gave a nod. The Hokage had previously left shadow clones to carry out his duties. After a few minutes, the two arrived at the ramen stand and took a seat at the counter. Minato was saying, "Hello Tucci," to the chef. Naruto said, "Hello Tucci," as well. He said, "I want a big bowl of pork and miso ramen." "Hello Hokage-sama." "Hello Naruto. I will get your order ready Naruto." "What do you want Hokage-sama?" Tucci responded. "I want chicken ramen please." Tucci stated, "It will be ready in a few minutes." He began getting the orders ready. Minato was informed by Naruto about his new classmates, their new subjects, his ambition to become the greatest ninja in the world, and how his friends had begun making fun of him and Hinata. As Tucci placed the bowls of ramen in front of the two, he remarked, "I don't know why they think that Hinata-chan and I could be a couple." Minato smiled. It was just too good. This discovery would have given Kushina a field day. She and Hikari, Hinata's mother, had always made jokes about how their two kids would make the ideal couple. He could, however, appreciate Naruto's skepticism. At the age of 8, he had never witnessed a genuine bond within his family. He was unaware of this aspect of relationships because he didn't want another woman by his side after his mother passed away. Shizune and Kakashi were not romantically involved, and his grandmother only physically assaulted his godfather when he committed a perverted act once more. Even though Minato had a sneaking suspicion that they were at least somewhat attracted to one another. Of course, they denied it outright. Naruto was therefore a little naive about something other than friendship. They had all the time they required, and eventually he would get it. The peace was currently assured, and Suna was in an even better position when they signed the new alliance contract. During the lesson following their most recent simulated mission training, Naruto sat at the academy. Shimato-sensei described what the instructors who had been stationed at the training ground they had utilized had noticed. To help them improve on their areas of weakness, each student was given a sheet listing their personal skills. The group's general tactics and movements were now covered. Capture the flag was a variation of the fictitious mission. Each three-person team was given an object to guard, and the other half had to attempt to steal it from the groups defending it. Tsuneito and Choji Akamichi had been Naruto's partners. To balance the teams for this, one student from each of the three classes was included in each group. The Naruto's group performed admirably. Tsunei and Choji both consented to let Naruto devise the plan and followed it. All of their attackers who attempted to take their item had been thwarted by Choji's enormous body. After Naruto and Choji trapped them, Tsunei, who was quite skilled with wires, tied them up. One item was even taken from another group by their group. Naruto argued that no one had prohibited the groups with items from attempting to steal more. Additionally, he contended that if certain others were able to defeat them, they could simply give up one item and still have one of their own to pass the test. This made sense to Choji and Tsunei. To illustrate the various tactics that the students could have employed and that were employed in the simulated mission, Shimato-sensei created a diagram. After demonstrating the effectiveness of each tactic, he related the fictitious mission to an actual situation from the ninjas' everyday lives. To help the students understand what might occasionally be at risk in the event that a mission failed and the ninjas were apprehended, he highlighted the repercussions of each tactic. The head of the ANBU's torture and interrogation department would teach the 6th-year academy students about how adversaries would attempt to obtain information, but none of the students were aware of this. Following the lesson, the students went to grab lunch. After lunch with his grandmother, Naruto wanted to chat with Hinata and Ino for a little while because they were both in their first medical classes. When Hinata saw that she was one of the 20 students invited to attend the classes, she was overjoyed. Ino had been pleasantly surprised. It would be an excellent chance to learn a different branch of ninjutsu. Additionally, she believed her familiarity with plants her parents own a flower shop could be useful. However, before Naruto could speak with either of the girls, he was summoned by an Anbu. The Anbu clarified, "Your father the Hokage sent me to get you immediately, Naruto." He was dressed in a black cloak and a tiger mask. Naruto responded, a little perplexed, "Huh? Okay, it must be important if daddy sent you here." It was the first time his father had ever sent an Anbu to pick him up from the academy. Every time he wanted to tell him something, he waited until he got home. If he did this, there must have been a serious situation. The other pupils gazed at Naruto and the Anbu with interest. The masked ninjas were not frequently visible to them. They only took open action in emergency situations. Since they were introduced to the ninja system and the responsibilities of each rank during their first week at the academy, it goes without saying that every student was aware of the Anbu. Using a Shunshin no Jutsu, the Anbu placed his hand on Naruto's shoulder and carried him to the Hokage Tower. They reappeared outside Minato's office a moment later. Minato summoned the Anbu when they knocked. With a gentle yet serious expression, Minato said to Naruto, "I see a tiger got you. Please sit down, I want to discuss something with you." After giving a nod, Naruto took a seat on one of the chairs facing his father's desk. The office was left empty by the Anbu. When Minato made a few quick hand seals, the seals on the walls started to glow. Naruto was tense now. This was extremely serious if his father felt that his office needed to have its privacy seals activated. But what could he want to talk about with him that was so serious? His age was only 8. "I see you are wondering what I have to tell you that requires the activation of the privacy seals, right Naruto?" said Minato. "Yes, Daddy. You only use these seals if something is very important, but normally this involves higher-ranked ninjas. I am only an academy student. You are right, Naruto. But this is about something that involves your status as a Jinchuriki, said Minato. Naruto examined his dad's face. He awaited his next move. In 2 days the Kazekage of Suna will arrive at Konoha and he will bring his 3 children with him. Tamari, the oldest child, is 3 years older than you are. Kankuro, the middle child, is 2 years older and the youngest Gaara is your age. Suna is in a dire situation, as our spies told us. Their daimyo has reduced their fundings and drawn some of the missions that normally goes to Suna away. This could become a big problem in the future. People are willing to make harsh decisions when they are forced into a corner. Minato checked to see if Naruto was pursuing him and was happy to see that his son was paying close attention. One action the Kazekage had taken was to use the one-tailed tanuki, the Ichibi no Shukaku, to make a new Jinchuriki to improve the quality in Suna's ninjas. The Jinchuriki is his youngest son Gaara. Naruto let out a gasp. When his father had to make him a Jinchuriki, that was a totally different reason. To keep Konoha from being destroyed, he had been compelled to seal Kyuubi inside of him. Gaara was placed in this predicament in order to be used as a weapon. Only due to the ignorance of certain adults. I see you understand. The Kazekage wanted a weapon to strengthen Suna and sacrificed his own son. In my eyes, the most despicable reason to create a Jinchuriki. And from what we were able to find out, they messed the seal up. It is nowhere as stable as yours and the boy is known to be a ruthless killer. But I doubt that he really is that unstable. I think he only needs some help with his seal and friendly contacts to be broken out of his behavior. That's what you want me to do, right? To try to be a friend to this Gaara? Naruto thought. Yes. I want you to try to become his friend. You know how Jinchurikis are treated if the people are ignorant and nobody really makes them see the mistakes they make with their behavior. My suspicion is that Gaara is just trying to make people see him the only way he can think of. With a demon who seems to influence his mind and nothing but hatred thrown at him, he tries to protect himself this way. I will try to improve his seal so that his demon can't influence him anymore, but to heal his soul he will need people he can trust. Okay, Daddy, I will do it. But what about his sibling you said he had? Couldn't they help him? I mean, we live in 2 different villages. It will be difficult to help him when he is in Suna. Don't worry. For this there is somebody else who will try to make his siblings see that a Jinchuriki with a working seal is nothing to be afraid of. Yugito will be around Tamari and Kankuro to make them realize that Gaara is still their little brother and not some kind of monster. I only hope she doesn't try to involve them in her attempts to show me up, said Naruto. Minato merely smiled. The Ichibi no Shukaku gives Gaara control over sand, which, if it is like with previous containers of the demon, acts as an automatic shield to protect the boy from outside attacks. However, sand has a weakness. If it gets wet, it will no longer be able to be used as before. Well, we have to prepare you for the arrival of the Kazekage and his children, so I let the Anbu take you from the academy. In order to protect you and Gaara throughout his entire stay, I have dispatched 8 of our top water technique experts. They will maintain a safe distance, but I won't take any chances if Gaara loses control. Yes, that makes sense. As Hokage, you can't endanger the village even if you want to help Gaara, said Naruto. And I also would never endanger you, Naruto. You are the most important person in my life and I will do everything I can to protect you. Naruto grinned. A male voice said, so you all remember the plan? Numerous other voices responded, yes, Leader Sama. The locating of the Jinchuriki is our first priority. We know the location of the Ichibi in Suna, the Kyuubi is in Konoha, the Sanbi is in Kiri, the Yonbi and Gobi are in Iwa and the Hachibi in Kumo. But we don't know where the Nibi, the Rokubi and the Nanabi are. And we don't know the identities of the Jinchurikis. For the next years your job is to collect as much money as you can to collect a solid funding for our operation and to find out who the containers of the bijus are. Keep a very low profile. We are not yet ready to show ourselves to the elemental countries, the leader clarified. Understood, was the response, and the Akatsuki members' fictitious appearances vanished. My plan will be finished soon, Madara thought contentedly. If only he were aware of the strong opposition, Minato would do whatever it took to keep Naruto safe. Additionally, a particular god was not pleased with his persistent avoidance of death. The man who had contributed half of his genetic material was being followed by a red-haired boy. He didn't consider that man to be his father. The loneliness in his life was his own fault. The ongoing attempts at murder. For the death of Yoshimaru. The one person he had really trusted had attempted to kill him twice now. It hurt the most, even though he was only one of them. He had kept everyone away from him ever since. All of them desired the same thing. To either use him or kill him. What makes him spare them, then? He would be a weapon under his own terms if that was his intended purpose. To prove his existence, he committed murder. Nothing more. It had made me feel even more alone. What could he do, though? He refused to be killed by them. No, all he needed was his mother, who urged him to murder those who dared to threaten him. He was aware of his strength. There was another aspect of him that was hidden deep within. He truly was a child. In order to avoid being alone, the child desired to have friends. However, this was merely a fantasy. Would anyone dare to become his friend? What is the sand demon? He could dream, though. He had hope. He might have been able to maintain some sanity because of this. The inability to sleep also didn't help. Konoha was their destination. The Cage's goal was to maintain good relations with the village. The resurrected Yondaime Hokage was said to be extremely strong. This man was not the Cage's ideal adversary. However, he had heard rumors that Suna was having financial difficulties as a result of their daimyo's reduced funding. In order to raise the skill level of lone ninjas, he was made a Jinchuriki. That, however, had gone terribly wrong. His powers were uncontrollable. As they claimed, the Shukaku prevented him from sleeping and made him unstable. Well, they ought to have made a stronger seal if they had wished to have a stable container for the demon. Gaara was anything but a moron. He was aware from some research that the strength of the seal was correlated with the degree of control a Jinchuriki had over his abilities. And his was clearly too feeble. Additionally, his research had shown that a Biju could only be sealed in any container by a skilled seal master. Well, he thought Suna was terrible in this area. He therefore only took action that was necessary for his survival. Before he was killed, kill him. With every death his sand brought about, his heart had been gradually ripped apart. He didn't want to die, though. He desired to survive. He desired to establish his existence. He desired attention. Was that really incorrect? How he longed to be understood by someone. Who would take him in? Did anyone else resemble him? Could he meet them, if there were? Did they suffer as much as he did? Or did they have a better life? Despite his desire for friendship, he was afraid of being deceived once more. What ought he to do? For the final 2 days before the Cage's visit, Naruto's father permitted him to avoid the academy. In order for Naruto to be able to defend himself to some extent if needed until the Anbu had to step in, Minato personally taught his son how to use a few minor water jutsus that didn't require elemental recomposition. Minato fervently wished, however, that Naruto and Gaara would simply get along. He had been told by his ninjas that the Cage and his group had crossed the Fire Country border. They were only going to be here in a day. As usual, Minato had produced more shadow clones because of the volume of preparations. In order to truly master the 2 jutsus, Naruto also used 50 clones for training during these 2 days. Once he had persuaded his father that he could help Gaara become more stable and better control his demon, he had one clone research the various seals known to contain demons in order to assist Gaara. Finding out about the new jutsus made Naruto happy. However, he was also quite eager to see how Gaara would react. He was always annoyed by Yugito. She always tried to show up, but he didn't understand why. He questioned whether this was her personality or if all Jinchurikis were like that. After all, the Nibi was a cat, and cats enjoyed playing with their prey. It's possible that Yugito inherited some of Nibus's qualities. However, he was fairly certain that he had inherited this trait from his father, even though he was a prankster at heart. This had nothing to do with the Kyuubi, despite Kitsune's reputation as infamous pranksters. Naruto and his father were standing at Konoha's main gate. Yugito was standing next to them. Both kids were wearing semi-formal attire. Yugito wore a red kimono with white flower patterns, while Naruto wore a dark blue yukata. When notable visitors came to the village, Naruto had to wear formal robes, which he detested. In particular, the fire daimyo. The fact that he no longer had to spend so much money on his wife's fugitive cat made the man very happy. Tora was quite happy with her new therapy. As a result, Naruto was forced to go to almost all of the daimyo and his wife's meetings, which he generally found dull. When the guests arrived this time, he would be accompanied by people his own age. He was on a mission, too. In an attempt to win Gaara's friendship. He genuinely desired to be friends with Gaara. He resembled him a lot. The first silhouettes of the anticipated guests were now visible to the Konoha ninjas who were standing at the gate. Minato remained composed. In addition to his preferred cloak, he wore the official Hokage robes. He was sufficiently aware of Suna ninjas to be vigilant without being overt. Since Sunas and Konoha had different philosophies, he had to ensure that Konoha wouldn't be at a disadvantage when the new alliance was being formed. Naruto wanted to know what Gaara would be like. He made an effort not to jump around, though. He had learned that a positive first impression was crucial when dealing with foreign dignitaries. He also didn't want to make his father and his clans look bad. Damn his responsibilities as 2 clans' heir. When they were by themselves, he hoped Gaara wouldn't mind if he let loose. The delegation from Suna arrived at the gates. As required by his position, the case cage was traveling in a sedan. 10 ninjas, the personal guards of the case cage, were walking alongside the sedan with his kids. The case cage then got out of his traveling vehicle and the sedan was placed on the ground. As was customary, Minato waited for him to approach. The children of the case cages trailed behind their father. Now Naruto could see the three clearly. Blonde and sporting 4 pigtails at the back of her head, the girl was clearly the oldest of the three. Her battle kimono was blue, most likely to allow for freedom of movement throughout the trip. The next boy was brown, haired and dressed in black pants and a black shirt. The youngest boy had a tattoo of the kanji for love on his forehead, red hair, and dark rings around his eyes. The most unsettling aspect of him was his eyes. They had a lonely, betrayed expression that Naruto could really relate to. His father's eyes would have been the same by now if he hadn't been raised from the dead, he was certain of this. Gaara was dressed in a slightly lighter shirt and dark brown pants. A gourd almost as large as himself was at his back. He watched as a group of Konoha ninjas gathered to welcome the case cage. The Yandaime Hokage was definitely the man in the red and white robes with the hat bearing the kanji for fire. He was a dangerous man. He exuded a strong aura. He intimidated Mother as well. He sensed it. His gaze then landed on the 2 kids. There was a boy who might have been Temari's age and a girl who was almost Temari's age, if he was correct. Though not the same shade, they were both blonde. The boy's hair was gold blonde, while the girl's was dark blonde. He noticed the parallels between the two when he looked at the Hokage. Thus, the boy was the son of the Hokage. Fascinating. Maybe he would be difficult. The case cage then greeted the Hokage, forcing him to focus on something else. The case cage remarked, "Hokage-sama, it is a pleasure to meet you again. Likewise Case Cage-sama. I wish to welcome you and your entourage to Konoha and hope you will feel welcomed here. Let me please introduce you to my son." He instructed Naruto to follow him. "This is my son and heir Naruto Namikaze Senju Uzumaki." Naruto made a formal bow. "It's a pleasure to meet you Case Cage-sama," said the man. He pointed to them and said, "Likewise Naruto. I think then it is my turn to introduce my family. These are my children, the oldest one being Temari, the next being Kankuro, and the youngest being Gaara." With the exception of Gaara, they all bowed and greeted each other. This made the case cage's face twitch, but he knew Gaara wouldn't allow himself to be made to greet him in a proper manner. Naruto made the decision to act independently. He moved in Gaara's direction. The Suna ninjas all tensed up. Naruto extended a hand. He smiled and said, "Hey Gaara, do you want to be friends?" Gaara appeared perplexed. Was this boy interested in becoming his friend? Why? He was feared by all. He looked for any indication of betrayal in this boy's eyes, but he found none. Maybe this was his opportunity. He could still be killed later if Naruto betrays him. He took the other boy's hand and said, "I would like that Naruto." Their eyes were not believed by the Suna ninjas. This has never occurred before. Anyone who got too close would be killed by Gaara. And this boy touched him and got away with it. Naruto said, "Dad, is it okay if I showed Gaara around in Konoha?" Naruto made an effort to act as grown-up as he could during formal meetings. Additionally, it would likely be immature to refer to his father as Daddy. "Of course Naruto. But be back by 3 o'clock. We want to have the banquet then," said Minato. "Yes, thank you Dad. Come on Gaara, I want to show you some of the best places in Konoha." Naruto then grabbed Gaara's hand once more, pulled the red-haired boy along with him, and vanished around a corner. "Well, I hope this isn't a problem Case Cage-sama. He kind of forgot to ask for your permission in his excitement. He loves to make new friends," explained Minato. He secretly felt a great deal of pride in Naruto. He did not allow the case cage to interfere with his bond with Gaara. In the hopes that Gaara wouldn't murder the other boy and incite the wrath of the Yandaime Hokage, the case cage replied, "No, this is quite all right." "But wouldn't it be better to let some guards follow the boys?" asked the man. "Oh, don't worry about this. Even if Naruto doesn't know it, a squad of Anbus is stationed around Konoha to guarantee his safety. If I told him he would be insulted. So they only show themselves in case of emergency. My son is quite proud of his independence." He pointed to Yugito and said, "I see. Well, maybe you could introduce us to the girl that is standing behind you." "Of course. Well, this is Yugito Ni. She is one of our last year academy students. When I heard you wanted to bring your children, I figured it would be nice for Temari and Kankuro to have someone their age showing them around instead of them having to look after their younger brother." "You're very considerate, Hokage-sama," the case cage retorted. As Temari watched Yugito, she noticed that she was following suit. Tamari carefully questioned Yugito. You aren't some of those girls who just mindlessly chase a boy, are you? Hell beware, I hate that kind of girls. I am a true kunoichi. You also seem to take your ninja career serious. Thank goodness. I really feared I had to babysit some kind of spoiled princess with your father being the case cage. Come on, I will show you around and we can get to know each other better. Nothing better than to trade some training tips with a fellow kunoichi in training. Yugito and Tamari left and Kankuro was taken a. He called out, hey, wait for me. The girls simply smiled malevolently. Tamari said, catch us if you can, and she ran after Yugito. Mumbled, kids, by Minato. The others were only able to nod in agreement. At the summit of the Hokage monument, Gaara found himself. With pride, Naruto gestured toward the village below. See Gaara, this is the best spot in the village to see everything. You know, one day I will be Hokage and protect this village for all my precious people who live here. My father, my grandmother, my godfather, my friends, even that annoying Yugito, the blonde girl that was there when you arrived at Konoha, he added after seeing Gaara's puzzled look. Why would you do that? You can't trust anybody. I had to learn that the hard way, Gaara replied with stoicism. Naruto remarked, man, they really give you a hard life in Suna. With harshness, Gaara questioned, what would you know? Gaara's sand suddenly reacted violently as Naruto started. I know personally how blind people can be if they are afraid and nobody sets them straight. No sense to dance around the cake. I know you are a Jinchuriki. Naruto continued, calm down, Gaara. I still want to be your friend. Gaara stared into Naruto's eyes incredulously as the sand stopped in front of him. He questioned, you know and you don't care? Why would I? I am a Jinchuriki myself. I contain the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Which one do you have? Asked the man. Gaara's response to, the Ichibi no Shukaku, left him stunned. This boy was similar to him, but based on what he observed in the village as they went by, he was treated appropriately, even with respect. Gaara questioned, how can you be so normal? After a while. Believe me, things would be very different without my father. The Kyuubi attacked the village when I was born, and the only way to save it was to seal it because no human could kill a Biju because they are too strong. My father gave his life to call upon the Shinigami to use his power to seal the fox into me. The council at the time was corrupt and only cared about gaining power, so they made it so that they had more power than they had before my father passed away, and Grandpa Sandaime was compelled to allow it to happen because he was only appointed Hokage again after it was already over. I was placed in an orphanage because the council forbade me from being adopted by the Sarutobi or Hyuga clan. I spent 3 years there, feeling very alone and receiving no affection from anyone. The children avoided me, I had very little to eat, and I had no toys. The worst part was when I was cast out shortly after Christmas. On that day, my father came back, and the Shinigami revived him because Shinigami played a poker game against my guardian angel. Gaara gave Naruto a look that made it obvious that she didn't believe him. Naruto pouted, accurately interpreting Gaara's expression. Hey, it's true. Well, I was chased that day and some mean villagers wanted to hurt me, but then Dad found me, rescued me, and after this we went to Grandpa Sandaime. My father took back his Hokage title and yelled at the village for being idiots who couldn't understand the difference between a prison and the prisoner. Since then everything changed for the better. The corrupt council was put into prison, some were executed for treason, and most of the villagers accept me now for what I am. Well, I had the Ichibi sealed in me to make me the ultimate weapon of Suna. My father doesn't care about me, just power. When I turned 6, he decided that I couldn't be controlled and was a failed experiment. I can't control the Shukaku. He sent assassins after me ever since. But my sand protects me. Gaara was gazing down. Due to some incompetent sealing I can't sleep, if I do Shukaku takes over. Would you show me your seal, Gaara? I am learning about Fuinjutsu and perhaps I can see what is wrong. And I am sure my dad could fix it. He is the greatest seal master there is, said Naruto. Gaara appeared unsure. He might actually benefit from this. He showed Naruto the seal on his stomach after slowly pulling up his shirt. Naruto scowled. That can't be true. That seal is completely useless to contain a demon. Your seal masters must be suicidal morons. We have to see my dad as soon as possible. This can't go on, Naruto screamed. Gaara inquired, what's wrong with the seal? Well, seals have a certain structure. They consist of many different components. For a seal meant to contain a demon you need a part where the demon is locked up, very similar to a storage seal but different. Then you need some layers of filters to stop the evil chakra from destroying the body of the container, mental blockers so the demon can't meddle with the container's mind, converting parts so the container can use the demon chakra for his own needs and barriers to stop the demon escaping. Your seal lacks mental blockers. Some barriers in the converting parts are strange, but I can't point it out completely. But you got really messed up with your seal, Naruto clarified. Gaara snarled. He was already aware that his seal was too weak, but it took an additional 8-year-old boy to realize what all of Suna's purported seal masters had been missing for years. Ironic, indeed. Naruto looked at his timepiece. We have at least 2 hours until the meeting is finished. Do you want to play until then? Replied Naruto. Play? Gaara said, her expression disbelieving. Naruto winced. He said, they didn't let you write? Gaara gave a headshake. Well, then we will certainly play together. Let's get some of my friends and we will head towards the park. At this time they should get out of the academy. Don't worry, they all know I am a Jinchuriki and they still like me. They will be nice to you too. Naruto reassured Gaara. Gaara nodded and trailed Naruto to the academy, still perplexed by how this could have all occurred so quickly. He found hope. This boy, who was also his friend, understood him well, wanted to help him, and corrected himself. He might have had a chance at a better life after all. Suna's visitors would cause the academy to close early today. At 3 o'clock, some of the clan children would have to go to the banquet with their parents. Tsunade called a few students to stay behind so she could talk to them about something, but that was the only exception. Sakura Haruno was one such student. Because of her high level of chakra control, the girl was one of 20 kids in her year who were selected for the medical program. However, Tsunade was well aware that the girl was not training as hard as she should have. She therefore made the decision to wake the girl up. She would need to get in shape quickly if she wished to become a skilled ninja and, more specifically, a medic. She was accompanied by 4 other students who shared her circumstances. One boy came from a ninja family, while the other 3 girls were from civilian families. Tsunade questioned, "Do you know why I called you for her?" 4 people shook their heads at her. "You're here because I found that you 4 did not take your training serious." The 4 did not object to her. The need to convey to them that being a ninja was not a game was too great. Answer one question. Why do you want to be a ninja? The 4 were surprised. This was not what they had anticipated happening. So, can none of you answer my question? The first person to respond was the boy from the ninja family. I entered the academy because everybody in my family is a ninja. I didn't want to disappoint my family. Tsunade nodded. At least he was truthful. I want to become a ninja to impress her. Sakura started, but Tsunade cut her off. I thought so. This will be the same reason for the other 2. You want to impress your love interest. Do you know what a ninja is? What we do if ordered? They gave Tsunade a curious look. A ninja of Konoha is a soldier under the command of the Hokage. If the Hokage orders us, we have to fulfill missions that can go against some of the understandings of moral civilians have. As 3 of you are born to civilian families, you probably have been raised to this morals. If ordered, a ninja will assassinate others. If ordered, we lie, deceit, betray and kill others. It is necessary because we live in a cruel world. Tsunade took a moment to process the information. She didn't want to be too harsh, but these kids needed to understand what was ahead. You may ask why we do something like this. The answer is, if we don't, the other hidden villages will not hesitate to use our reluctance to attack first. Konoha has very high moral standards in comparison to other hidden villages, especially Iwa. But sometimes we don't have a choice but to do what is necessary. I have lived through 2 wars. I have killed many ninjas. Even if I am a medic nin. Sometimes you have to decide to do unpleasant things to protect those you love. I lost my fiancé copyright in the war. I lost my little brother. I thought I lost my son and my grandson when Kyuubi attacked. She inhaled deeply. As a ninja, you have to cope with these kinds of losses. Perhaps you have seen some older ninjas with crazy attitudes. Those are measures to compensate for their losses in the past. Everyone has a different method to do this. What I want to say is, if you are not willing to do these things, if you are not willing to risk your lives for the village so that others are safe when you are not, then you are not cut out to be a ninja and should look for another profession. I don't do this to discourage you but to give you the chance to better yourselves. Now you still have time to shape up. If you want to go this way, then put all your effort into your training. Stop chasing your love interests. She noticed that the 3 girls were beginning to object. This is no game. And I know for a fact that Sasuke, Naruto and Sai dislike fangirls. You have no chance to get any of them with your behavior. Putting only the minimum of effort into your training won't get you anywhere other than an early death. That's all I wanted to tell you. Go home and think about my words. But began one of the girls. Don't make me say this again. Go home and think. Really think about what I told you. Think if you are really willing to risk your life for people who will probably never fully understand you. who can't understand you fully, but who you chose to protect because they are part of your village. To put others before yourself is a major part of the will of fire our village is proud of. Tsunade left after saying that. The four exchanged gloomy glances before simply shrugging and heading home. Since her father worked at the Merchants Guild during the day, he had left some lunch for her when she got home. They would typically meet in the evening, chat about their days, and then Sakura would retire to her bed. She knew that her father wasn't pleased that she was incarcerated, even though he never really spoke of her mother. However, he also refrained from criticizing the Hokage, who found her guilty of treason against Konoha. Sakura, however, failed to see why her mother's actions were considered treasonous. Then they heard what the Hokage's mother, Tsunade, had to say. Did she truly want to put herself in danger for the people who idolized the man who caused her family's predicament? Since she had been a baby when the demon attacked, she was unable to fully comprehend the significance of this for the people of Konoha. Even though he had managed to stop the Kyuubi, she had no recollection. She was aware of her talent, though. She wouldn't have been permitted to remain at the academy otherwise. That much was certain. Her mind was very sharp. She picked things up quickly. But maybe she should consider her options if Tsunade was correct and she was a member of the Sannin for a reason. She was not going to be someone Sasuke hated. However, how could she win his approval? She didn't want to put in more physical labor than was necessary. You were sweating and smelling from training. However, the young Uchiha boy would only consider someone who had some sort of ninja training. Thus, she was unable to abandon the ninja academy. Some subjects, however, led to specializations that required little physical labor. Take medical jutsus, for instance. Being a successful medic nin required a great deal of specialized knowledge and high levels of chakra control. That she would benefit from. She could work for this. It would even be enjoyable. And Sasuke needed to see her achievements if she was going to be the best at it. Genjutsus was the next area. Additionally, the majority of those were non-physical skills. To truly benefit from the diversions they offered, you needed to be reasonably fit, but nothing too challenging. Furthermore, not many ninjas decided to specialize in this particular area of ninja expertise. Sakura decided as a result. She would demonstrate that she would succeed on her own, possessing abilities that did not require her to be the kind of lady her mother always wished her to be. She would strike while hiding in the shadows. Tsunade could have done the same if she had become well known with medic jutsus. However, Sakura failed to recall that Tsunade was renowned for both her superhuman strength and her status as the best medic nin. Maybe she would discover that before she became too physically weak to fight against it. On the other side of the Yondaime cage, Minato took a seat. He was obviously not like this man at all. However, he was the village leader, so if they wanted their villages to flourish, they had to work together. Minato was aware that shifting the balance of power too much in Konoha's favor would be foolish. It was once said that the friendship between the ninja villages was the result of their respective strengths being balanced. The daimyo of Wind Countries was foolish to believe that Suna would always overlook the consequences of his actions. They were unable to. They relied on their ability to defend their nation in the event of conflict. A man who always prioritized his duty over his people was the Kage. He was convinced that his people would be safe if the village was strong. Unfortunately, he would have been wrong to ask Minato. Without a valid purpose, such as defense, strength was pointless. He needed to remind Orochimaru of something when they eventually located the jerk. However, he could offend the Kage and upset the delicate balance of the villages if he wasn't careful in this meeting. Oh, how I detest politics. Sometimes it seems so much easier to fight. It's simple, and the rules are set by the winner. However, if done on a large scale, there would be too many casualties. Another shinobi battle is unnecessary. It was bad enough with the last one. If I can stop it, I don't want to kill pointlessly. Furthermore, I don't want Konoha's children to grow up in a war, always remembering the loss of someone's valued people. No, Minato thought, if I can, I will stop a war. The Hokage was being closely watched by the Kage. Despite being a few years younger than him, the man was among the strongest shinobi ever observed. Although he was aware that the Hokage was aware of Suna's current predicament, he also knew the man was not a fool. Suna had a good chance of reaching some beneficial agreements in this new treaty because he was attempting to maintain the balance of power. Well, Kage-sama, let's not waste time by beating around the bush. I'm not a great fan of politics, and as I know, Suna has been victim to some of the more foolish attempts of politicians in Wind Country's capital. We have recognized an increase in mission demands from Wind Country and were surprised. Well, I don't know the reason why your daimyo is doing this to his ninja village, as the costs of hiring us or you is nearly the same. But I think we can work out some compromises to settle this problem. The Kage was taken aback and in a way relieved that Minato desired to resolve the issues amicably. However, he was also constantly alert. The Cage remarked, "I'm quite curious to hear what you are suggesting, Hokage-sama." Well, if my information is correct, Minato began to consider, you would be astonished I know about Cage. You took several measures to ensure Suna's functionality despite the decreasing funding from your daimyo. One being creating a new Jinchuriki for the Ichibi. You don't have to try and deny it, I even know that the Jinchuriki is your youngest son Gaara. Minato grinned at the Cage's subtle attempts to maintain his expressionless demeanor. Oh yeah, Minato thought. I'll make you wriggle. Knowing about yours is just the start of your humiliation. As Jinchurikis are some of the best kept secrets in a village. We are grateful to Kami for Jiraiya's aptitude for managing a spy network. Nothing eludes him for very long. How on earth did he know? The Cage was enraged. If one of the other cages found out, our counter-espionage division must be seriously deficient. At least the Hokage isn't Suna's official enemy. But going forward, I must exercise greater caution. Hold on, he let his son play with Gaara even though he knew about him. Most parents would be concerned about their child being near a potential danger, even if he had bodyguards to keep the boy safe. However, Minato Namikaze is sitting here looking completely at ease. If I may ask a question, Hokage-sama, if you knew that Gaara is a Jinchuriki, why did you allow your son to play with him? Aren't you worried that Gaara might be a danger to Naruto? Why would I? I know that the Biju and the host are two separate beings. I am far too intelligent to mix them up. A host is only a danger to those who wrong him or her. And I can ensure that my son has a habit to befriend nearly everybody in a short amount of time. So why would Gaara try to attack Naruto if not provoked? I mean, Suna wouldn't be stupid enough to antagonize a Jinchuriki to the point where he gets unstable and releases the power of his demon on them. Only complete idiots would do something like that regarding the power of even the weakest one of the Bijus. Minato gave the Cage his unambiguous message while grinning naively. You made a huge mistake, and it is your fault that your son is going insane and killing people all the time in your village, which you are meant to defend. The Cage had to maintain a composed exterior while fuming on the inside because he clearly understood what Minato was saying. However, he had to acknowledge that Suna's persistently hostile actions toward Gaara were not making matters better. I mean, a Jinchuriki that has strong emotional bonds to his home village will less likely be tempted to act up against the village. That is common knowledge. Even Kumo is understanding this, and they aren't the brightest ones around the elemental nations, said Minato. But now let's move on to some other business things. I mean, I am sure you let the best seal masters of Suna create Gaara's seal so your son wouldn't be influenced by the demon. Every father would make sure that his children were protected even if he had to fulfill a duty to his village, right Cage-sama? Asked the man. Minato was playing with great skill. He only made sarcastic remarks about things that should be obvious or logical. However, he was aware that since the boy's birth, Suna had disregarded common sense in the matter of Gaara. He had a deep affection for Jiraiya's spy network. The Cage nodded stupidly. Even though he didn't like what the blonde Hokage hinted at, he was powerless to take revenge. Which Cage would? You are right, we have much to discuss and a banquet to look forward to. I think it would be a good idea to share our ideas for the future of our alliance. Of course. Well, as I said, we recognized a certain increase of missions from Wind Country. My suggestion is we make something like a mission pool for our missions and look whose ninjas are suited best to fulfill the missions. I mean, think of a mission where a skilled puppeteer would be far better suited than a normal combat specialist due to the fact that the supposed opponent used poison. It would be problematic for Konoha to send a suitable team. But Suna is famous for its puppeteers. The Cage gave a nod. He had attempted to explain that to the daimyo, but the man had simply disregarded his arguments. And if the mission is in Wind Country, it would be a waste of time to send a team from Konoha due to the distance. Otherwise, it would be stupid for your ninjas to take missions in Fire Country when Konoha is nearer. So I suggest we set up a geographical perimeter. One part is Suna's responsibility, one part is Konoha's. And if a mission is requested specifically for one village's ninjas while the other would be nearer, we could make this a joint mission so both our villages profit from it. That should take care of most of your financial problems in the future and give our ninjas a better mutual understanding of each other. That sound good, Hokage-sama. In the long run, we might even get the daimyo to see that this is far more effective than cutting Suna's fundings. But we still have the problem that we can't train many ninja due to being restricted by the current laws that were enacted, replied the Cage. Yes, and there I want to make a trade. We have established a new educational system at our academy and the results are astounding. Our new generations of genin are far more advanced than they ever were in the past. I would be willing to share the basics of our system for you to implement in Suna so your students could improve more than until now. Then you would have better qualified ninjas. In return, I would like to get some wind jutsus from Suna, as you are the most knowledgeable village in this respect. As being a wind element myself, I'm always interested to learn more about it. That could be arranged. It's a fair deal. We get a better training program and you get some rare techniques for your village, the Cage said. Naruto was showing his friends Gaara at the playground. Gaara was shocked that the other kids didn't despise or fear him, since Naruto didn't conceal the fact that she was also a Jinchuriki. It had never occurred before. Every time someone learned about Shukaku, he was shunned. Why are you all so accepting? I don't understand, Gaara replied. Sai questioned. Why would we not? I mean, Naruto is my best friend and has been it since we were 3 years old. I knew from the start that he contained the Kyuubi, and it doesn't matter to me. He is Naruto and not the fox, as you are Gaara and not Shukaku. What is so difficult to understand about this? Sai is right. We all know the difference between a prison and the prisoner, and in Konoha everybody accepts Naruto for keeping Kyuubi imprisoned. Why would we treat you different, Gaara? Ino responded. There was an unidentified warmth in Gaara's gut. For him, that was an entirely new sensation. This was something he had never encountered before. What was this sensation? And after what Jashimaru had done to him, he had vowed never to trust anyone again, so why did he feel he could trust these kids? What did his own father do? His eyes started to well up with tears without his knowledge. Gaara, are you all right? Shoji inquired. Gaara gave him a look. He didn't know if he was okay. All of that was unfamiliar to him. Gaara, it is okay. I understand you. It is hard to grasp being accepted for the first time. But you know, I will always be your friend. We are similar to each other. I was only lucky that my dad returned when I was 3 and changed my life. We will help you that your life will change as well, said Naruto. The others merely gave a nod. After getting to know Gaara a little, they found him to be a nice guy, and they could relate to Naruto's wish to assist him because they were both carrying the same burden. That was simply Naruto's nature. He touched people's hearts and gave them a better life. They were all happy that he was their friend because of this. Gaara grinned. He flashed a tiny, sincere smile for the first time in years. In a restaurant, Temari and Yugito discussed the latest rumors, the fashion in both villages, the cute boys in Suna and Konoha, known ninjas in their respective villages, and the topics the Cages most likely discussed. After they had taken up residence in the restaurant, Kankuro caught up with them and expressed regret at being forced to spend time with 2 girls. It was preferable to having to spend time with Gaara, who was a 10-year-old boy who detested gossiping girls and whose mental health issues made him occasionally extremely dangerous to be around. Well, how is living in Suna generally? I only know it is located somewhere in the desert, replied Yugito. It's a harsh life, but we become stronger from training under extreme conditions, Temari said. We naturally have different exercises to train chakra control. I have heard you use sticking leaves to parts of your body as an early exercise. Well, we don't have many plants in Suna, only those in the greenhouses which are grown for medicinal purposes. But we have a need to be protected from the burning sun, so our first control exercise is to maintain a constant layer of chakra on our skin to block the sun. That makes sense. I can imagine that you work with what you have available, but I have one question I want to know more about. I have recognized that you seem to be somewhat afraid of your younger brother, Gaara. Why is this? I mean, he is only the same age as the nuisance Naruto. Yugito was interested in learning more. Kankuro and Temari tensed. They exchanged uncomfortable glances. It's not that we hate him, he is our brother after all, but he is dangerous, said Kankuro. How? You have at least 2 years more training than him, and if there was a Kekkei Genkai in your family that gave him an advantage, you would be born with it too. Since the Hokage had told her about the circumstances in Suna and instructed her to try to persuade Temari and Kankuro to be more receptive to Gaara, Yugito understood why they were terrified. She was supposed to ensure that Gaara had someone to turn to when he returned to Suna, and Naruto would open Gaara up to everyone. Through their interactions with her, Temari and Kankuro would be more inclined to assist their younger brother if they understood that not all Jinchuriki were harmful. At last, Temari stated, it is not a bloodline. Gaara has a condition. He is emotionally not very stable, and he leashes out against anybody who is in his way if he is like that. Yugito seemed to be considering this information carefully. I understand. So from what I know about Suna's history, you haven't learned from past mistakes regarding Jinchuriki. There is no other explanation. This also explains his high chakra levels I felt when we were greeting you at the gates, Yugito said. Kankuro and Temari tensed. Really, did you think that Suna was the only village to have a Jinchuriki which is mistreated? This is really no new experience. Ignorance is the most typical character trait for those who are not knowledgeable in sealing. We have our own Jinchuriki in Konoha and nobody dares to mistreat them. The Hokage would make sure the one to harm them would regret his decision bitterly. And we have no problems with mental instability. Yugito grinned. When Kankuro said, "Really? But we were always told to keep away from Gaara because he couldn't control the Ichibi," Tamari gave him a disapproving look for divulging village secrets. The only Jinchuriki who are unstable are those with shitty seals or those who are driven over the edge by their village. They either desert or go racking havoc. And it is a pain in the ass to calm down a mad Biju, Yugito stated. How do you know so much about Jinchuriki and Biju? I didn't know the Konoha Academy taught this much about them, Tamari responded. That's easy. I am one of Konoha's Jinchuriki. I was sent here in a treaty between Kumo and Konoha after the Hyuga incident. I have the Nibi inside of me. And I can tell you, Konoha under Yondaime-sama always treated me well. From what I have heard from the Kumo Jinchuriki, they are also changing their ways under the Yondaime Reikage. Do I look that dangerous to you? Yugito replied with a grin. Kankuro and Tamari were only able to shake their heads. It never occurred to them that Yugito might be a Jinchuriki like Gaara. She was so typical. Who is Konoha's other Jinchuriki? He must have the Kyuubi inside of him. How can he control that power? Kankuro inquired. Yondaime-sama's son Naruto Namikaze, and I think he hasn't really started training in controlling Kyuubi's power. He is still too young for that. I mean, he is 8 years old. Normally a Jinchuriki starts training to access that chakra at 12 or 13. You need a body which is somewhat grown to even attempt to control that malevolent chakra. I will begin training to access Nibi's chakra in a year or so. At the moment the only training I receive is contacting Nibi in her seal and starting a good relation with her. But that is not always guaranteed. Some Bijus are harder to cooperate with than others. Yondaime Hokage-sama sealed the fox in his own son? And he doesn't treat him like a weapon? Gaara was always seen as a faulty weapon in Suna? Tamari was taken aback. Well, from what I heard, it was not always the case. When Naruto was very young, his father hadn't been resurrected and the villagers tried to hurt him. Sandaime-sama tried to protect him but could only do so much with the corrupt council hindering him. It changed when Yondaime-sama came back and took back control. He executed or arrested the corrupt councilors and installed order in the village. He has the backing of the fire daimyo and his heritage only helps with his standing. He is a senju after all. Kankuro questioned, a senju? Like the Shodem and Nidaime Hokages? Yes, his mother is Tsunade Senju of the Sannin and his father was Dan Namikaze. So he is the great-grandson of the Shodem. Here in Konoha your ancestors are important for your social standing. It is a bit retarded but it takes time to change old ways. For the ninja ranks it doesn't matter. The most talented ninjas get promoted first and get the higher ranked missions. The academy is sorting really strict. After 2 years we have the first important test to sort out useless fangirls, slackers or otherwise unmotivated students. They are transferred to one of the civilian schools. After those 2 years we are sorted by our ranking in the tests which are every 6 months to see if we have improved or need more work in some areas. Yondaime-sama only wants true ninjas in his ranks. Our mission success rate has multiplied a lot after those changes have been done. This sounds really interesting. Perhaps father will agree with Hokage-sama to implement some of those ideas in the ninja training in Suna. What do you think? Could you show us some of the more interesting sites? I would also like to see how this new mentality is lived in the village, asked Tamari. Sure. We can start at the academy. I am allowed to show you our outdoor training grounds. Then we can visit the public library, some of the shops and perhaps have a quick stop to look at the clan estates. After that I think our time will be up and you are required to attend the feast in honor of your father's visit here. After paying for their tea and snacks, Tamari said, I think that is a good idea Yugito, and they departed the restaurant. Gaara was enjoying himself immensely. For the first time in his life, Naruto was playing with kids his own age, and all of his friends were incredibly kind to him. The best thing that ever happened to him was this trip to Konoha. Shino was the one who sought out the other players while he played hide and seek. He had not played any of the games they wanted to play, but they had patiently explained how to play them to him. Beneath some tree roots, Gaara had discovered a pleasant hole. He was able to hide himself quite effectively with the aid of his sand, and he now waited for Shino to try to locate him. In order for the kids who didn't benefit from their clan's unique skills to enjoy themselves as much as the others, they had chosen to play the non-ninja version. Gaara had just slipped into the hole more easily by using the sand. When Shino approached Gaara's hiding place, he remained motionless. He had already located Shikamaru and Choji. Shino was skilled at seeking, in Gaara's opinion. Fortunately, Shino got past his hiding place. 10 more minutes passed before Shino discovered Gaara to be the second. To last. The final one was Naruto, who simply possessed a remarkable talent for stealth. Gaara didn't mind, though. For the first time in his life, he played a game with other kids, and it was fantastic. They must have called this happiness. All he wanted was to have this in Suna. The next game was suggested by Kiba. He desired to engage in a cooperative game. They would attempt to hit the other group members with the ball he was holding. You had to sit on the sidelines if you were hit until someone from your own team hit the player who had eliminated you from the game. Gaara ran around with the others, getting acclimated to the idea of catching or dodging the ball, and it was enjoyable. A hit to the sand was a hit to him because his sand responded automatically. After several attempts, he was able to prevent his sand from reacting when the ball was thrown at him, allowing him to fully enjoy the game. When Kankuro and Temari passed a playground close to the academy, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Gaara, their younger brother, was playing like any other child, attempting to dodge a ball or slamming thrown balls into other kids. He was grinning as well. A genuine smile that wasn't cruel or crazy. "See, if you treat a Jinchuriki like a human being you have nothing to fear from them," Yugito said. Temari exclaimed, "How can this be? If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it." While Naruto is an annoying brat, he has this surprising ability to reach out to people and make friends with them. As long as the person is not totally rotten, they normally begin liking him, even if they are annoyed by him. I think this is the reason Yondaime-sama asked Naruto to be the one to show Gaara around. He knew of your brother's problems and wanted to help, Yugito clarified. But I don't understand. If this was such common knowledge, why has everybody in Suna been warned to not interact with Gaara? If it was so easy to ensure that he wouldn't harm anybody, why did nobody make sure Gaara was happy? It would just have needed some explanations that Gaara isn't dangerous or just keeping the knowledge of Shukaku being sealed inside him a secret and nothing of Gaara becoming unstable would have happened, Kankuro argued. I know Kankuro. I don't understand it either, but sometimes adults are just hungry idiots. They don't care that they destroy a life with their manipulations as long as they get what they want. I think they wanted a powerful weapon and failed to make a good seal. This is the reason he is not able to completely control the sand and it has a life of its own. Then they discovered that they were unable to control their weapon and tried to dispose of him, making him angry, a fatal mistake. Naruto and I never were in this situation thanks to Yondaime Hokage-sama. Temari and Kankuro made a silent commitment to support their younger brother going forward. To assist Gaara, the Yondaime Hokage might be able to fix the damaged seal. Their brother would most likely regain a great deal of mental stability if he could sleep without worrying about the demon escaping. After all, insomnia made it impossible for anyone to remain sane. The Kazekage and Minato waited for their kids to come back to them. Minato hoped his schemes were working. He was confident that Gaara could connect with Naruto's distinct personality. Additionally, Yugito excelled at highlighting glaring errors in reasoning. She would provoke thought in Kankuro and Temari. And typically, that would be sufficient to win their support for Gaara. Gaara would now be safe if he could only repair the seal and repair the damage, which would also benefit Suna and Konoha. An indebted ally was less likely to turn on you in exchange for a better offer, after all. Additionally, Minato could think of a number of Konoha's adversaries who would entice Suna with offers if they broke their alliance with Konoha. Madara and Orochimaru were present. Iwa particularly didn't like him. Kumo was still a little bitter over the Hyuga incident that cost them Yugito, one of their two Jinchuriki. Kiri posed a threat due to its ongoing civil war, but it was probably not a threat to Konoha at the moment. Therefore, it made sense to keep Suna from getting desperate. Minato simply did not comprehend Wind Country's daimyo. The idea that a ninja village without most of its funding wouldn't do something foolish to save itself was suicidal. This was the second reason he wanted Naruto and Gaara to become close. In times of conflict, a village's primary weapon was typically a Jinchuriki. The Jinchuriki might not have taken part in the war if he thought that another Jinchuriki was superior to his village. Furthermore, Konoha was in a strong position because it had two Jinchuriki living there. Minato had no illusions that his village would be a prime target for the others following the last wars, in which Konoha had emerged victorious, even though the Shoden had given away the demons he had controlled in order to ensure the balance between the nations. If the narrow-minded interests of politicians were involved, then true peace, what his sensei hoped and fought for, was simply not achievable. True power would guarantee that Konoha could maintain its way of life, not just a position of authority. The way Naruto had been treated in the 3 years since his death had demoralized him. To persuade others to act morally, you had to be strong. Minato was aware of his dictatorship. He was frequently criticized for that. However, he was also aware that there were dangers outside that needed to be appropriately addressed. He would not permit traitors to survive. Even though Konoha was centered on the will of fire, those who had committed grave crimes against the village, such as Orochimaru, couldn't be left alive. Madara's small-minded plans against the village. Before he could put everything together to launch a new ninja war, the man had to be stopped. The most instructive had been Danzo and his root spies. Danzo had discovered that Madara was responsible for the entire bloodline purge in the Land of Water. For the elderly Uchiha, the Yondaime Mizukage was merely a puppet. Minato and Danzo had devised a cunning scheme to take advantage of the issues in Water Country for Konoha's benefit. Which astute village chief would turn down the chance to acquire highly skilled bloodline wielders? Really, occasionally entire families from prominent clans who had escaped the purges. Konoha's ninja population had grown nicely. Only a handful of highly skilled former roots, who are now official ANBUs, were sent to Water Country to enter the fugitives' camps and provide Konoha with protection. Due to Minato's reputation as the strongest surviving ninja and Konoha's fondness for bloodline wielding clans, many people had moved there and established themselves. Since Minato now had some extremely strong substitutes for the ninjas killed by the Kyuubi, it had been a boon to his long-term projects. Additionally, the academy attracted a large number of exceptionally gifted and driven pupils. Double your earnings. Prior to being poisoned by the nonsense Kiri had indoctrinated into its elder ninjas, the children were taught the values of Konoha. As it turned out, Danzo had a great deal of experience dealing with emotionally dead ninjas. It was a very valuable old warhawk. He had information about nearly every high-ranking politician, every cage, and even himself. His information network was on par with Jiraiya's, and he had no residence where he could use it if needed. Or give it to Minato so he can use it however he pleases. Blackmailing your opponents was an essential part of being a leader, and it was a more effective and non-violent method than declaring war on them. If someone was foolish enough to start one, he wasn't opposed to fighting it. No, his elite was well trained and constantly prepared. The Cold War was sometimes required. All he wanted was to shield the village's children from the atrocities of war for as long as possible. As he sat in his suite, the Kazekage was deeply contemplating his Yondaime Hokage counterpart in Konoha. The man was someone he had never seen before. The Sandaime Hokage had ruled the village for 3 years following the Kyuubi attack. He found it hard to accept the official story that the Yondaime Hokage had been brought back to life because of a lost wager from the Death God, so he was the one who saw the finals if Konoha Genin had made it. The Hokage had no reason to go because no Konoha contestants had advanced to the finals in the following 2 years. There were 2 Konoha Genin in the finals of the subsequent Kumo exams, but no Suna Genin. He had sent his Jonin commander to watch the finals because he couldn't risk missing the village due to internal political issues in Suna, which prevented him from attending the exams in Konoha that followed. Civil war had forced the cancellation of the Kiri exams, and no Suna Genin had been entered in Kusa for the subsequent exams. It was one of the few occasions when a smaller village was honored to host the examinations. The last Chunin exams were held in Iwa, and Konoha didn't send many applicants because they didn't want to take the chance of promising Genin if it wasn't necessary. The success rates of Konoha's missions were remarkable. Over 90% of their missions were completed flawlessly, and the remaining 10% were typically the result of dishonest clients. This meant that the mission would either be upgraded and the more costly mission would be paid for later without forgiveness, or it would be stopped if the ninjas assigned to it weren't prepared to complete it. Furthermore, since doing so would result in an additional fee to compensate for the potential loss of Konoha ninjas, few clients dared to falsify their mission applications. The Hokage was known to assist those who truly needed Konoha's ninja assistance but couldn't afford the standard fees, even though he didn't compromise with dishonest customers. He always accepted the missions if they promised to pay when they could or if they did something that would benefit Konoha. Additionally, a big part of Konoha's success was due to this policy. The majority of people who were unable to pay the fees were able to do so by using services. Making exclusive treaties with Konoha for their minerals was the price paid by a small village on the Rice Country border. The village was close to an area with rare minerals, but a dishonest businessman had taken over the mines and kept all of the money the village would have made from prospecting for the minerals. Over the course of a few years, the village was able to regain its wealth after the Hokage sent a team of Chunin to stop the businessman. They also obtained an exclusive treaty for the minerals Konoha needed. The residents of that village adored Konoha ninjas and had nothing but praise for the Hokage when he came to sign the new treaty. The Hokage's son had clearly won over all of the women with his charming smile and grounded demeanor, and they were completely enamored with him. Hell, the boy had spent his father's business hours playing with the kids in the village, only under the watchful eye of an Anbu whose job it was to keep the boy safe. He knew intellectually that the Hokage's decision to bring his son to the meeting was just another astute political ploy. Because his son was just like any other child, he was able to portray himself as a powerful but ordinary man who loved his family and still had empathy for regular people. After spending a few hours with Minato Namikaze, he had a better understanding of why this man was adored by those he protected while simultaneously being feared by everyone who opposed him. He also didn't want this man to be his adversary. He had thus resigned in order to have the Hokage examine Gaara's seal and attempt to alter it in order to better shield Gaara from Shukaku's influence. To try to oppose this man would be a bad idea. If only he could discover the source of his information. The man simply used his opponent's dirt and weaknesses to highlight them without making fun of them, negating the need for physical threats. He was an absolute manipulator. Naruto and his companions reached the Namikaze estate, the location of the Cage feast. 30 minutes before the feast began, their parents had dispatched a messenger to deliver clothes for them to change into at the estate. For them, it was common for their kids to lose track of time while playing. In this instance, it was simply simpler to transport the clothing to the location where the kids would eventually arrive because Naruto had vowed to his father to arrive on time. After showing his friends to the guest rooms so they could change and wash, Naruto went to his own room to prepare. His father had led Gaara into a room and given him an outfit without saying anything. When his sister Temari asked Gaara if he needed assistance getting ready, that was the only thing he didn't understand. It had never occurred before. Trying to be courteous, he refused to assist her. Naruto, his new friend, had advised him that if he stopped constantly threatening people, it would be simpler to win their approval. At the conclusion of their playing time, he had acknowledged that it had worked with Naruto's friends, who had welcomed him and offered their friendship. The experience had been amazing. Trying not to feel stiff in his formal attire, Naruto sat on his bed. Dressing up was something he detested. He wasn't a dress doll. He was a ninja in training. They were too wide at the arms and too narrow at the legs. He was dressed in a light blue outfit in the traditional Japanese style, and his grandmother's somewhat sadistic delight at seeing him in what she called cute colors was added. He suspected that in retaliation for his previous prank, Shizune and Granny had deliberately modeled his attire after the kimonos the girls wore. He was certain that they had done it, even though they denied it. He heard his father say from the door, "I see you also dislike those formal clothes, Naruto." "Yes, Dad. It's just so stiff to move in them. I can tolerate the semi-formal ones. The yukatas are at least somewhat comfortable, but this is just plain crazy. Why'd I have to wear them?" Naruto grumbled. "As much as we may dislike it, I am not only a ninja but also a politician. I have to give a certain impression to others, and you as my son sadly are included in this. Be happy that I normally insist on semi-formal events. I dislike the traditional robe as much as you dislike your kimono. I always doubted the sense in making males wearing kimonos to official events. Only females look really good in them, but somebody made those rules, so we have to live with it." As promised, Minato was dressed in his position's red and white robes rather than his typical Jonin garb, which included a white cloak with red flames at the bottom. He held the Hokage hat in his hand. Since the hat didn't fit his naturally spiky hair, Naruto knew his father didn't wear it very often. "Come on, the guests are waiting, and after the official greeting is over you can go meet your friends. I know for certain that the food the caterers prepared for today will have some of your favorites. While we could hardly put ramen on an official banquet, we have variations of rice dishes with fish, meat and vegetables, different little fried snacks, sushi and a lot of other things. That's the part one will enjoy most after the greetings are over. These events are only tolerable because of the food," Minato said with conviction. Naruto chuckled a little. "You are right, Dad. Well, let's get the greetings over with so I can at least blend into the background with my friends. By the way, Gaara would really like it if you could fix his seal. He is a nice guy and just needed some friends. He was really happy when we played with the others at the playground." "I'm glad to hear this, Naruto. If the Cage agrees and he will if he knows what is best for him, I will do it after the banquet is over. I think it will be eye-opening for the Cage to see his son behaving like a normal boy just because he found children who wanted to be his friends. He will not risk losing Gaara to Konoha." "Why would Gaara come to Konoha?" inquired Naruto, curious. "The only way Suna can stop Gaara from escaping in the future is to make sure he is treated well when he returns. I don't want to start a war with Suna over stealing their Jinchuriki, which is why Yugito was assigned to make Temari and Kankuro realize how wrong their treatment of Gaara was. In Suna, he is treated badly. No one treats him like a human being. They only see the demon. In Konoha, he was welcomed and played with children who weren't scared of him. This is a powerful motivator. I needed to find a way to strengthen at least one village, and Suna, as our ally, was the best option. However, Suna is in a difficult situation because their daimyo is cutting their funds, so it's likely that some dishonest and foolish advisors thought that one up, and they would have become desperate very quickly. We need to maintain a balance between the 5 great nations, and with Kiri already weakened due to the civil war, the balance has already swung towards Konoha. I see. By giving them a helping hand, they are indebted to Konoha. They can keep their strength and even gain more by taking over our training system. And in case one of the other great villages thinks to do something that would be bad for Konoha, we could easily stop them with Suna at our side. With a smile, Minato remarked, "Very good, Naruto. Politics passed." Naruto grinned at his dad. The banquet was a huge success. Naruto was tortured for 45 minutes, during which he had to greet all of his father's guests politely. Eventually, he was able to leave the adults and join the kids. As the heirs of their clans, he and his friends soon started telling Gaara, Temari, and Kankuro stories about other dull gatherings they had to go to. While accompanying their father to significant events, Temari and Kankuro also shared some anecdotes about shady politicians they had encountered. For the most part, Gaara had been kept at home to avoid international incidents. Gaara had a very instructive evening. The godsend a deck of cards could be, like those Shikamaru had smuggled into the room, how to get them back with pranks when no one was looking, how to keep a straight face and resist the urge to kill some stupid adults that completely irritated him, and how good some foods tasted. The banquet's buffet format, which allowed guests to take whatever they wanted, was a huge plus. Naruto always knew how to obtain more if something was missing, and where to go if you overate, as Kiba discovered when he believed he could compete with Choji in a food eating competition they had started on their own. Shizune, who Naruto had just persuaded to assist Kiba, reprimanded Kiba for being foolish for attempting to out-eat an Akamichi. After Minato said goodbye to everyone, the guests finally began to depart, and Tsunade escorted Naruto and Gaara aside, explaining that their fathers wanted to see them in an hour. Naruto was simply relieved that he was exempt from having to take part in this. He took Gaara up to his room and showed him his favorite books, toys, and the amazing view from his window of the Namikaze estate's grounds. Minato was relieved to have finished this cage feast. All he needed to do was talk to the man about the Gaara seal. It seemed to him that the cage had come to the conclusion that he had little other option. You didn't become a cage by being foolish, after all. He walked up to the cage, who was waiting, and asked him to enter his private study. Cage-sama, I have told my mother Tsunade to tell Naruto and Gaara to meet us in my study in 10 minutes. We should probably discuss the details of the seal before they come down, said Minato. Very well, Hokage-sama. I have come to the conclusion that a functioning seal would be most beneficial for the interests of Suna, and if you are able to repair the flaws the seal seems to have, I would be really grateful if you would do us the favor. Certainly, Cage-sama. Please follow me. I have some good sake stored in my study that I have hidden from my mother. Otherwise she would have taken it for herself. While she is one of the strongest kunoichi of all times, she still hasn't gotten over her bad drinking habits. But I have to admit days here would be more boring if Shizune wouldn't try to get her away from drinking so often. Minato chuckled lightly. The cage was aware that this was a strategy to lighten the mood without revealing important information. It was common knowledge that the Slug Princess was addicted to alcohol. Although it never affected her work at the hospital, she did let herself go a little when she was not there. Primarily with the Toad Sage. After all, they were former teammates. To make it apparent that the Hokage didn't want to talk about things in a tense situation, it was a good idea to tell him about a funny incident. Don't we all have our little sinful pleasures? I am sure every ninja who has made it to the top has a quirk others might find disturbing, replied the cage. Without understanding why, both men shuddered abruptly. Meanwhile, a recently promoted Jonin wearing a green spandex suit was yelling, "Youth," on one of Konoha's training grounds, at the top of his lungs, frightening the local fauna. Naruto and Gaara arrived on time at the study. The cage and Minato gave them resolute glances. Gaara, your father has asked me to have a look at your seal and if possible to improve it so you will be able to have better control over Shukaku and be able to sleep, Minato said in a gentle manner. I'm grateful, Hokage-sama, Gaara replied. Naruto grinned. This occurred sooner than they had anticipated. The cage obviously did not want his father to be against him. Even though admitting their inferiority to Konoha in the art of Fuinjutsu meant a blow to their pride, Suna could only benefit from this. Let's begin right away. I have a special room in the basement which walls are specially seal enforced so we won't have problems with Shukaku's chakra trying to prevent the new seal, explained Minato. The cage questioned, will the enforcement be strong enough to deal with Shukaku? It is able to keep Kyuubi under control if necessary. That was the main reason I built it. I don't take any risks with the safety of my son, so I needed a room where I could inspect the seal which imprisons the fox safely. And I can tell you the fox is trying to get back at me for sealing it again. Nasty temper that one has, he stated. Naruto laughed. His dad was correct. Kyuubi was not pleased to be confined once more. The fact that the seal his father had created was gradually depleting it of all his chakra made him detest it even more. When Naruto turned 20, the fox would no longer exist and he would have all of its power, in contrast to earlier Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Unlike other Jinchuriki who had to learn to control demon chakra, he would still need to learn how to control this much power. He would simply have a lot of chakra, but fortunately, the Senju, Namikaze, and Uzumaki clans had developed specific exercises for controlling chakra because this was a common occurrence. They were designed to teach kids how to work with high chakra levels from an early age. He had to learn not to squander chakra like candy, whereas other kids had to learn how to draw from small reserves and preserve them. Thus, the necessary chakra control exercises took two different approaches. Unlike typical kids, Naruto had to complete the exercises from top to bottom, and he was unable to stop for very long. He would lose his skills unless he practiced continuously. Getting the Kyuubi's chakra on top of his own had that drawback. Naruto watched the Kasuke's responses to this announcement as he followed his father to the basement. He was fairly certain that the man only reluctantly consented to make Gaara's seal better. Well, they wouldn't be in this mess if Suna hadn't stopped making quality seal masters about 40 years ago. Naruto was aware from his history classes that Suna used to be one of the most proficient villages in Fuinjutsu. But once they were at the top, they had stopped learning. Research had only been conducted by Sasori of the Red Sand, one of the greatest Suna puppet users in history. However, he had vanished and was now considered a missing nin. He brought his knowledge with him. Minato guided Gaara to the center of the room, where everything was encircled by seal arrays. Minato instructed Gaara to lie down and remove his shirt. When Minato activated the seals in the room by pushing his chakra into them, the sand abruptly acted out and then fell. Minato inquired, "Where is the seal located, Kasuke-sama?" To which the Kasuke replied, "His back." In order to improve Minato's ability to reach the seal, Gaara was told to turn onto his stomach. Minato used some of his chakra to force the seal into Gaara's hand when he was ready. Since his chakra was so entwined with Shukaku's, he didn't want to take the chance that Gaara would attempt to call upon it. He wanted to yell at the Kasuke for permitting the use of the complete seal to seal a Biju class demon as soon as he saw it. A Biju, which was at least class 7 for the weaker ones like Shukaku, would not be subdued by this. Only a typical class 3 demon would be. Kasuke-sama, I advise you to put some of your brightest subordinates to learn as much as they can about Fuinjutsu. It seems that over time a lot of the knowledge about this art has been lost to your village. While the execution of the seal in itself speaks of a highly capable user, the kind of seal is wrong for a demon of Biju class. This is a perfect level 3 demon imprisoning seal. Sadly, Bijus start at level 7 and go up to level 15 for the Kyuubi. I will be able to push the level of the seal up to 8 so that Shukaku, who is a level 7 demon, won't be able to influence Gaara anymore. If you had left this seal like it is, Gaara would have had to fight with Shukaku over control every wake moment of the day in only a year's time, Minato continued. Gaara thought angrily, great, I had to suffer from this mess just because Suna was too dumb to realize that they needed to keep up with the developments in Fuinjutsu. The Kasuke realized, I have a real problem. Shio has refused to impart her skills to any of our gifted ninjas because she is dissatisfied with the way Suna has been run in recent years. Kankuro is the only budding puppeteer who has the potential to eventually catch up to her. However, he is studying the art on his own using the scrolls Sasori left in Suna before he left because he wants to even outdo him. To make sure that we won't encounter this circumstance again in the future, I now require Fuinjutsu experts. I can only be happy that Chio used the seal exactly as instructed. She must have known it was too weak. However, Chio is simply very skilled at putting them into practice. She is not a master of seals. Naruto observed the seal's construction with interest. He was able to recognize the various components that went into making it, but he also noticed something that he had never seen before. He startled the Kasuke with his understanding of seal construction by asking, Dad, what is the part in the filter section in the top right part of the seal? I am trying to find out myself. This is not part of the normal seal. It looks like somebody tried to build a gate for easier access to the Shukaku from outside. But this would totally go against the supposed job of the seal. No shinobi village wants that outsiders have access to the Biju they possess. This would allow such a success. If I had to guess, I would say somebody in Suna was working with somebody outside the village and sabotaged the seal for whatever purpose they have. I just don't understand how this would have been overlooked by the security. Sealing of Bijus is S-ranked and only the utmost loyal ninjas of a village are part of it. I can't imagine somebody so high up would be a traitor and not be spotted. You are right. I constantly check for the loyalty of my subordinates, especially those in important positions. I would have noticed a traitor. But I will look into this more closely, the Kazekage replied. The fact that someone had pulled off something like this and they hadn't discovered it yet annoyed him. If someone had ripped the Ichibi from Gaara and allowed it to run wild in Suna, this could have easily been the end of Suna. Hold on, the Hokage had stated that he needed to seal the Kyuubi. Had this occurred 8 years prior? Had someone been able to separate the Kyuubi from its previous Jinchuriki and unleash it on the village? In order to maintain equilibrium, the Shodai Hokage had been the one to distribute the bijus to the other villages, so it would make sense. The strongest one would only be revealed by an idiot. After all, it would guarantee protection from the others. When the Hokage asked his son to bring him various tools so that he could start improving the seal, he was pulled out of his reverie. For Suna, he really needed to hire more seal specialists. It was an unforgivable failure that no one had noticed that Gaara's seal was far too weak for a biju. Suna's safety was on the line. The village had already suffered because of this, if he was telling the truth. Gaara's goal was to eliminate all assassins since Jashimaru's abortive attempt on his life. This was how he had lost a lot of good ninjas. Minato's distaste for the Kazekage was almost imperceptible. That man only considered how he could increase his own power. Although he also took many steps to ensure that Konoha was stronger than any other village would ever be, he was limited in how far he would go to achieve this goal. He was aware that, as Hokage, he occasionally had to take chances that might result in his ninjas' deaths. However, he always made an effort to reduce those risks as much as he could. In contrast, the Kazekage was merely a reckless, power-hungry idiot who had experimented with power that he didn't comprehend. Additionally, he tried to destroy rather than fix things when they didn't go as planned. Dealing with this idiot as Suna's leader would be delicate, but perhaps he would develop intelligence and establish a foundation upon which Suna could operate effectively. Minato's plans were far ahead of their time. He was aware of the man's larger scheme from his battle with Madara when the Kyuubi was torn from Kushina. He didn't know enough about it at the moment to prevent it. However, he could attempt to be ready for anything. Jiraiya, who oversaw Suna's spy network, informed Minato that the village lacked any truly formidable ninjas capable of unseating the current Kazekage without severely undermining it. The man might be permitted to remain in the top spot as long as he didn't work against Konoha. Minato had a knack for spotting talent, and he saw plenty in Gaara. Gaara might succeed his father in 10 years, if all went according to plan. He was aware that Gaara was the most resilient of all the kids in Suna and that he could succeed with his siblings' help. He had noticed that Temari and Kankuro appeared to be reconsidering their perception of Gaara while they were at the banquet. Though it was encouraging, he would need to keep making observations. He was aware that he couldn't house Gaara at Konoha. Long term, it would hurt him. When this father retired or passed away, whichever came first, he needed Gaara in Suna to take over. And he needed support to keep Gaara in Suna, where he would grow strong and well liked. Backup who was capable of keeping up with him, and Temari and Kankuro were both exceptionally skilled in their respective specialties. In the future, those three might become an invincible force. But only if they had mutual trust. Using the tools he had acquired, Naruto assisted his father in strengthening the seal and controlling the Shukaku. Additionally, he watched intently as his father upgraded the seal to level 8, as he had promised. In addition to adding numerous kanji, lines, and symbols, he believed he recognized some ancient runes. Then, in order to be positive that he hadn't made a mistake, Minato carefully examined every component of the sealing array he had added, and he discovered that everything was flawless. Alright, the array is finished. I now need to do the actual sealing. Naruto, please go outside. I don't want the Shukaku try and contact the Kyuubi. I don't know what would happen if the two would combine their powers to try and break free, said Minato. With a nod, Naruto walked out of the room. Every time he gave him instructions, his father had a valid reason. Minato signaled the Kazekage to a secure location outside the array and started with a series of hand seals to complete the sealing as Naruto shut the door behind him. Pain shot through Gaara's body like never before. The Shukaku's screeching caused him to get a terrible headache, but all of a sudden the pain and the screeching stopped. He was exhausted, but he also felt better than ever. After wondering what had changed, he became aware that, for the first time in years, he was no longer able to hear the Ichibi inside his head. He muttered, "It's quiet. For the first time it's quiet." Minato examined the new seal in silence and nodded his head, satisfied with the outcome. Kazekage-sama, the new seal is working perfectly. Gaara will now be free of the influence of the demon but still be able to use the special sand powers the Ichibi grants its vessel. Gaara will need some time to really learn how to control them, but from now on the powers he got from his Biju will act more like a bloodline which he has to train to use at full potential, said Minato. This is really good. Thank you very much for your help, Hokage-sama. Suna is in your debt. I think I will take Gaara back to the hotel now so he can rest after the draining procedure. I will see you tomorrow morning. Goodbye, Hokage-sama, he said with a smile. Helping Kazekage-sama was a pleasure, until tomorrow morning. Most of the shops in Konoha were bakeries and restaurants that served breakfast, and many people took coffee to go with bread rolls. It was still early in the morning when the shops opened their doors for the early morning customers, who were mostly ninjas who had to start missions, or some of them who were returning from night shifts like guard duty or, in Ibiki's case, urgent interrogations. The first office ninjas were at the Hokage Tower, completing reports for the various departments or sorting through mission requests. They all knew that the Hokage didn't want to be bothered today, but some, particularly some desperate females, wanted to draw the young Hokage's attention and planned to surprise him with a birthday present. When Tsunade discovered that the women were fighting over her son, she made them listen to an hour-long lesson on how to behave properly in the Hokage Tower and why it was improper to flirt with your superior, especially with your son. The situation got so bad that 3 male office ninjas had to break up a fight between 2 female office ninjas who were fighting over the privilege of giving the Hokage her birthday present first. As a result, all 5 of them suffered injuries that required medical attention from the hospital's medical staff. Given that 3 other women were brought in for the same reasons, Tsunade would have continued her lecture if Shizune hadn't summoned her to a meeting of the hospital's top medical professionals. Since it was only proper to wish the village leader a happy birthday, the clan heads decided to make a brief visit to spend a small amount of Minato's time together, meeting at the Namikaze estate at 9 o'clock to finish the business so that Minato could enjoy the remainder of the day. They knew, of course, that Minato didn't want to be disturbed on his birthday, but they still wanted to congratulate him. They rang the bell when they arrived at the estate, but they waited for a minute without receiving a response. Where might he be? Shoza inquired. This is troublesome, we came here to wish him a happy birthday and he is not here, Shikaku said. Hiyashi proposed, well, maybe he's going out for breakfast with Naruto. It might be feasible. Inoichi concurred, I don't think Minato would want to cook on his birthday. Now, what should we do? Hikaru Kurama questioned the others, I'm not sure how long it will take for the 2 to return. Well, waiting for them is pointless. Shibi stated, we will have to wait until tonight, when Minato is expected to attend the fireworks, or if one of us happens to spot Minato in the village. The others concurred, and they split up into Persa or, in the case of the Ino, Shika, Sho trio, in Threesa and headed home, wondering where Minato might have gone. Unfortunately, some people overheard them and started discussing the missing Hokage. The stories were somewhat accurate at first, but they became increasingly fantastic with each retelling. With some claiming that Naruto had been abducted and that the Hokage was pursuing the kidnappers, the village was in a panic at 11:30 because they thought the Hokage had been abducted. When the hospital meeting ended at 12, a Chunin rushed up to Tsunade's office. You must come to the tower, Tsunade-sama. Hokage-sama has not been seen since yesterday, and based on what we have learned in the village, it appears that a crime has been committed. We only know that someone was abducted. We believe that they have Naruto because we don't think anyone could kidnap Hokage-sama. What? Who is brave enough to abduct my grandson? They'll cover the cost. Tsunade gave Shizune the order to leave the hospital after saying, go get Jiraiya to the tower immediately. I'll meet you there. Kakashi had made the decision to go out to the training grounds to practice a new technique he was working on. He had been inspired to create a second original technique after witnessing his sensei create another new technique the previous month. He wanted to change up his Chidori to have more options for its use. After all, the way the jutsu was now, he had to get close to his opponents, which wasn't always possible. Therefore, he had left the Namikaze estate at 11:30, after finishing his book, of course, and had gone to one of the outer training grounds to be undisturbed. He had no intention of returning to the village until an hour before the firework was scheduled to begin. After all, his sensei could argue that he didn't want to be interrupted while practicing his new jutsu if he had an entire day to do as he pleased without interference. There were 1 or more moles in the village, and Minato had made sure that no one could enter without setting off the security system, so she would find them. No one endangered her grandson. Tsunade stood in front of the village map, trying to figure out where a kidnapper could have gotten in and made his way to the Namikaze estate to kidnap Naruto, but she simply couldn't think of a way to do so. Tsunade, I just got back from speaking with the gate guards and inspecting all of the wall seals. Neither last night nor throughout the day has there been any suspicious activity. The Toad Sage reported, I couldn't find Kakashi anywhere in the village, but I guess he might be with Minato chasing Naruto's kidnappers. I believed so, however, I'm afraid we need to look within. It would be impossible for anyone to sneak into the village and take Naruto in a single night. No, the boy must have been taken outside by a mole that appeared out of nowhere and caught him. That's the only explanation that comes to mind. It's possible that Naruto slipped out to get something to surprise Minato with for breakfast. The mole drugged and stroked my poor grandchild when he saw him. If not, Naruto would have physically assaulted him. As soon as Minato learned that Naruto was missing, he must have convinced Kakashi to follow his lead and pursued him to prevent the kidnappers from escaping with Naruto. You might be correct. Ibiki ought to question everyone who might have taken Naruto, in my opinion. Better yet, we should allow him to question anyone without an alibi between 6 and 9 in the morning. The only time frame that appears to be feasible is that one. Otherwise, if Naruto had been kidnapped, someone would have noticed. I don't believe that a single person is responsible for this. I believe that the abduction was carried out by someone who had previously infiltrated the village, and that the subsequent transportation was carried out by a partner who was not from the village, Jiraiya proposed. All right, bring Ibiki here, he needs to get to work. Tsunade gave the order, I want every single suspect arrested and questioned as soon as possible. No one wanted to further infuriate the already enraged woman, so no one even inquired as to why the slug Sanin was taking over. The three Namakazes were laughing a lot and eventually went back to the beach to dry up. Minato was chasing his son through the waves at the beach after Naruto had thrown a water bomb at him while he was cuddling with Kushina. Naruto was laughing joyfully, even when his father caught him and threw him into the deeper water. Naruto got up and splashed his father, which was returned. Kushina didn't want to be left out, so she teamed up with her son against her husband. Kushina took the bottle of sun cream and applied it to her son's skin first, and then to her husband after he finished. Naruto, who had decided he wanted to build a sand castle, decided to leave them alone, so the innocent act of applying sun cream became an arousing game for the two adults. Naturally, Minato returned the favor by applying sun cream to Kushina, and soon they were kissing passionately, remembering that they should not go too far because their 8-year-old son was too young to learn about sexual relationships. Minato was already dreading having to give his son the talk in a few years, but for the time being, their son was still innocent, and Minato planned to keep it that way for a while. In the presence of Naruto, Kakashi kept his book in his pocket, Jiraiya behaved perfectly normal and refrained from peeping, and he had given both his student and his sensei a stern talking, saying that he would hurt them more than his mother could if he discovered that they were corrupting his son with their perverted interests. They were lounging in the sun when other visitors arrived at the beach. Minato opened his right eye half-heartedly to see a family of 3 arrive, followed by 2 unhappy-looking guards. One of the guards attempted to persuade the now-identified Prince of Moon Country, saying, "Your Highness, please, it isn't safe for you to come to a public beach." However, Captain, Hikaru has been anticipating a beach day for days, and today is really lovely, and he'll be more than capable of keeping us safe. However, the prince stated, I don't believe anyone would attack us here in Moon Country. Minato noticed a young boy, maybe 3 years Naruto's junior, holding his mother's hand and observing the world with interest. Kushina turned over on her stomach beside him and turned to face the family. They would have been less conspicuous if the guard had put on beach clothes and wouldn't shout the identity of the prince out, she said. You're correct, my love. However, ninjas, not regular palace guards, think that way. However, I have a suspicion that they will start to feel uneasy as soon as the sun rises, Minato replied. When the young boy noticed Naruto playing in the sand and approached him while the adults were arguing, Naruto looked up and gave the younger boy a questioning glance. Hi, I'm Naruto. Tell me about yourself, he inquired. My name is Hikaru. What are you doing? The younger boy inquired. Would you like to assist me in creating a sandcastle? Hikaru gave a nod. What do you do? Hikaru inquired. Have you never constructed a sandcastle before? Surprised, Naruto asked. No, this is the first time I got my dad to let me come to the beach. Oh, well, it's simple to build a sandcastle. You need to gather the sand around you and Naruto started teaching Hikaru how to construct a sandcastle, and the younger boy listened carefully. After that, the two boys started gathering sand in a pile and wetting it to improve its retention. Upon realizing that her son was no longer with her, Hikaru's mother discovered him contentedly playing in the sand with a blonde boy she had never seen before. She told her husband, "Look Michiru," and he stopped fighting with his guards. "Ameo, what is it?" he inquired, then followed her hand's direction. He joyfully exclaimed, "Oh, it looks like Hikaru already found a new friend." The guards said, "Your Highness, Prince Hikaru may be in danger." "You are absurd. That boy is only 8 years old at most. with him, he is merely creating a sandcastle. Hikaru also appears to be enjoying himself. I'm relieved that he's acting normally for once, Ameo reprimanded them. When they finally heard someone laughing, they turned to see who might be the source of the laughter and discovered a red-haired woman sprawled beside a blonde man who must have been Hikaru's new friend's father. The man was clearly smirking, and the woman was the one laughing. What's so amusing? One of the guards posed a menacing question. The guardsman was reprimanded by Ameo, who said, "Captain, stand back, there is no reason to treat innocent tourists like that." The captain began by saying, "But Princess Ameo." "Ameo is right, Captain. All they wanted was to spend a day at the beach as a family. Not dangerous killers who want to murder us. They only have beach-related belongings and are unarmed. When an assassin wants to kill someone, do you really think they would bring their young son along?" Michiru inquired. The captain countered, "But if they were ninjas, they wouldn't need weapons, we can see." Minato moaned. He only had his wife back for this one day. Why couldn't people just leave them alone? He just wanted to spend his birthday with his family. Was that too much to ask? "Captain, just stop it. How could ninjas have predicted our arrival here today? We made our decision only 30 minutes ago," Ameo remarked, growing weary of the excessively suspicious man. Ameo and Michiru rolled their eyes and had their guards set up a parasol and a blanket when the captain finally gave in, but he promised to tell Shabadaba about this folly. After an hour of finishing the sandcastle, Naruto went to his parents and asked if he could go swimming. Kushina said that he could, but that he should not go deeper than he could stand. Although Naruto was a good swimmer, he had never experienced waves and had not yet learned how to walk on water. Naruto nodded joyfully and ran into the water, his new friend trailing behind him. "Minato, I think it would be good if we would eat after Naruto comes out off the water," said Kushina. Minato replied, agreed." With some delicious snacks in their basket, he was certain Naruto would be hungry when he returned from swimming and was eager to enjoy a beachside picnic with his family. As per his mother's instructions, Naruto remained where he could stand, but that did not prevent him from getting hit by the waves. He jumped through them and laughed joyfully when they came rolling in, and because the waves were gentle, even Hikaru was able to get back up each time he was rolled over, which only happened twice. Suddenly, a larger wave came in, and both boys were dragged under. Naruto heard someone mention that ninjas were concealed in the water. He nodded and attempted to swim to the surface after realizing that he could also understand animals in the water, but he was pulled under again after he was only able to breathe in when he opened his eyes and saw only an eel on the ground. When Kushina and Minato heard a shout and turned to face the water, they saw a large wave crash over their son and his little companion, and they hurried to the water right away. The guards were also responding, and they saw Naruto reappear, take a breath, and then submerge once more. Minato and Kushina instantly entered combat mode. The words, "Luki, what we have here," were heard by them. The voice was that of one of three ninjas who were now standing on the water, the other two of whom were holding Naruto and Hikaru, who appeared to be unconscious while Naruto struggled to get away. "I would never have thought that our training trip here would bring us such an opportunity." The ninja were dressed in an underwater suit bearing the Kiri insignia. "Not only do we encounter Moon Country's crown prince and his spouse, but they also allow their son to play in the water unaccompanied. Your Highness, I have no doubt that we can strike a successful agreement. I'll even include this other obnoxious brat. Naturally, at the appropriate cost." The guards were in a panic, and Michiru and Ameo were worried about their son's safety. Minato glared at the Kiri nins, who appeared to be less certain now, and said, "Let us deal with them. Nobody threatens my son and gets away with it," he stated. Already, Kushina was going through hand seals. She yelled, "Water release, water ropes." Ropes of water immediately sprang up around the Kiri ninja's legs, and Naruto used the distraction to escape his captor. He kicked behind him and struck him in the shin, falling beneath the water's surface before Minato, who had already crossed the distance between the shore and the Kiri ninjas in a matter of seconds, grabbed the three unconscious ninjas and pulled them to the shore after quickly creating a shadow clone and having it stand back with Naruto as he easily knocked out the three ninjas and freed Hikaru. He called them weaklings as he threw the ninjas in front of the guards, who were astounded by their impressive performance. "Take them and imprison them," he told them. "You should see if there are other people who would try to make a quick Ryo by kidnapping the prince, even though this seems to have been a coincidence." Ameo yelled, "Hikaru," to her son and started to worry about him. Kushina was checking on Naruto in the meantime and was relieved to see that he was unharmed. "I sincerely appreciate your assistance." Michiru thanked Minato, saying, "I don't know what would have happened without you getting my son back so fast." "Your Highness, it was a pleasure for me. But I wish there had been just one incident. Free day." With a sigh, Minato replied, "We just wanted to spend my birthday outside of the village, where I would have undoubtedly been harassed all day." The captain told Minato, "Now I know where I have seen your face. Minato Namikaze, you are the yellow flash of Konoha. Are you not the Hokage of Yondaime?" "Yes, I am." "Why? Is it not possible for a Hokage to want to spend a day away from his family?" Minato inquired. "Don't you need guards to keep you safe?" the captain questioned incredulously. "They were ditched. I am capable of protecting myself without the assistance of guards. Furthermore, my wife is almost as strong as I am. Underestimating her would be lethal for an adversary. And they can't try to ambush me if no one knows where I am. At least not if I only take a day's vacation. And since I'm gone for the day, the village won't disintegrate." "That is true," Michiru remarked, obviously impressed by the chance encounter with such a well-known ninja. Ameo suggested to Kushina, "The least we could do for you saving our son is to have you join us for lunch." After exchanging glances, Kushina and Minato nodded at one another. The answer was, "With pleasure," from Kushina. Receiving a complimentary lunch was too good to pass up, and it would be extremely impolite to turn down the parents' kind invitation. The kidnappers were very skilled, and Tsunade had already ordered 20 search teams to look for signs of her son and grandson. Hopefully, Ibiki would have discovered something, but so far, no team had been successful. "All right, Ibiki, have you identified the offender yet?" she inquired. "No, Sama Tsunade. However, 3 undercover agents were discovered. But they had nothing to do with Naruto's kidnapping," he said. "All right, carry on asking questions. As quickly as possible, I want to identify the offender. Since the search teams haven't discovered anything yet, our best chance of discovering a clue as to where Naruto might have been taken is in the interrogation department. We don't know Minato's current location, so it would be great if I could just send him a message. We had the option of sending him backup." "Have you attempted to ask the Toads?" Ibiki inquired. Yes, Jiraiya had already spoken to them, but they were unaware of Naruto's abduction. Additionally, they would require a specific location and a summoner in order to appear where Minato is. Unfortunately, after saying, "Well, I'll return and see if we've made any headway," Ibiki walked out of the room. Danzo sat in his office pondering how someone could have kidnapped Naruto. It just didn't make sense. The boy would have reacted if someone had approached him without warning, and he would have resisted, making a lot of noise that would have immediately brought the Anbu to the scene. The only way that Naruto could have avoided being kidnapped would have been if he had been taken while sleeping or if he had been taken while he was asleep. However, the Namikaze estate was secure. No one could have entered without Minato and the Anbu knowing. Perhaps the question was not how Naruto had been abducted, but rather whether he had been abducted, since he was certain that Naruto had a Hiraishin seal concealed in the Kyuubi seal on his stomach, which would have prevented any attempt at kidnapping by Minato immediately showing up beside his son and eliminating any kidnappers. This idea made a lot more sense. Minato had stated that he didn't want to be bothered during the day and that he would be at the fireworks in the evening, so it's possible that he simply used his Hiraishin to sneak Naruto along with him. If someone had attempted to wish Minato a happy birthday while he wasn't at his estate, people might have overheard, misunderstood, and exaggerated his absence. Tsunade was Naruto's grandmother, so it was understandable that they had jumped into action after learning that Naruto had been abducted at noon. Now, he had to decide what to do with his knowledge. Normally, he would have told Tsunade and Jiraiya that it was all a blown-up misunderstanding, but based on the reports he had received, they had already located 3 undercover agents, so this was too good an opportunity to pass up. He called out, "Fu." Next to him was the former Root Ninja. "Yes, Danzo-sama?" he inquired. "You will approach Tsunade and inform her that I sent you to assist in questioning the suspects in the kidnapping of Naruto Namikaze. Focus on eliminating any potential undercover agents. I want to take advantage of this to make Konoha safer, even though I know Naruto is only traveling with his father. In an hour, I will explain the situation to Tsunade. We'll wait for the time being." "Yes, Danzo-sama," Fu replied, and he went to Tsunade using Shunshin. Danzo laughed and remarked, "Well, Minato, you will have a lot to do when you come back from your trip." After saying goodbye to Michiru, Ameo, and Hikaru, Minato, Kushina, and Naruto promised Hikaru that he would keep in touch with him. The Namikaze family was now making their way to an amusement park that Ameo had suggested, and Naruto was ecstatic as he ran a few meters ahead of his parents. They intended to spend 3.5 hours at the park before dining at a restaurant that Michiru had highly recommended. When they arrived at the park, Minato paid for their tickets. The first area of the park resembled a zoo, but all the animals were free to roam around, and visitors were walking through the environments in which they lived. Of course, the animals were harmless, but they came from all over the elemental nations, and Naruto particularly enjoyed the giant eagles because he wished he could fly like them, and the monkeys because they were funny. They enjoyed every ride in the amusement park, and when his mother exclaimed her happiness while riding the water adventure roller coaster, Naruto laughed uncontrollably. Minato preferred the free fall ride, which was based on the great tree in Taki. Naruto enjoyed everything fast and thrilling, and they also played some skill games together. Although it was forbidden to use ninja techniques, some things were simple for a ninja even if he didn't use his special abilities, such as hurling balls at cans, darts, or catching fish with tiny pieces of paper. Danzo was standing in the Hokage's office while Tsunade was still frantically trying to figure out where her son and grandson might be. Danzo offered a, "Hello Tsunade," greeting. "Hey, Danzo, nice to meet you. Do you know where Naruto and Minato might be right now? Or how could someone have been able to capture Naruto in the first place?" Desperately, she asked. At this point, Danzo made the decision to allay the anxious grandmother's fears. After all, they ought to have summoned everyone who might have been involved in the crime for interrogation, and Fu could have easily located the spies using his Yamanaka clan methods. "I don't believe Naruto was abducted," Danzo stated. "What? Please explain," said Tsunade, perplexed. After receiving the message, she had spent hours looking for any hint as to how her grandson could have been abducted, and now Danzo was telling her that this was not a kidnapping. "Well, as you and I both know, when Hokage-sama retook the hat, he significantly increased village security. It is impossible that an intruder was missed. His seals would have been enough to identify even S-class ninja. Therefore, a mole inside the village would be the only possibility. However, Naruto would have resisted if someone had attempted to kidnap him inside the village. He is too powerful to be taken easily. He would therefore need to be drugged. However, a wide area technique is the only way to accomplish that, and we would have discovered evidence of it. In addition, Hokage-sama added a Hiraishin seal to Naruto's seal for the fox, just like he did with his wife. Hokage-sama would have been at his son's side and saved him the instant he learned that Naruto had been abducted without anyone noticing. Furthermore, he could have discovered that something was wrong in as little as 10 minutes. Since the search teams found nothing, the only explanation is that Hokage-sama spent the day with Naruto somewhere far away using Hiraishin. Some amusement park or other attraction, I suppose. That's the only rational explanation I can think of, Danzo said, outlining his ideas. Realizing that Danzo was probably correct, Tsunade sat down on the Hokage's chair in relief. "Why didn't I notice that, my god?" she inquired. "When you learned that your grandson had been abducted, you were devastated. However, it was an excellent emergency simulation. Additionally, we discovered 7 undercover agents that we otherwise would not have been able to locate. Thus, I believe that today was fruitful. However, I'd like to know how the kidnapping rumors got started," Danzo acknowledged. "Danzo and I will find out, too. The entire village is on guard against rumors. We can't try to make the village panic for no apparent reason, even though we have some pleasant side effects." "I concur. Hokage-sama needs to investigate one more matter." An hour before his sensei was supposed to return from his trip, Kakashi was in a good mood and had finished his book and made progress with his long-range Chidori variant. He just wanted to take a shower before meeting the 2 Namakazes for the fireworks, so he was shocked to see everyone in a frenzy when he arrived in the village. What the hell had happened while he was training? He said, "Pardon me," to the gatekeeper. The guard looked over at Kakashi. "It's nice to see you, Kakashi. Did you locate him and the abductors?" the guard inquired. "What?" Kakashi questioned incoherently. "Did we identify the kidnappers and what did they take?" "I've spent the entire day training outside the village," he said. "What?" However, he was informed that he was pursuing Naruto's kidnappers with Hokage-sama. Was Naruto abducted? How did you think of that tale? Early this morning, Naruto and Minato-sensei departed the village for a family outing. In order to avoid being bothered today, Sensei used Hiraishin wherever they went. They left a note at the Namikaze estate's refrigerator. In an hour, they will return for the fireworks. How in the world did you think Naruto could be abducted for an entire day and not be discovered right away by Sensei? Kakashi drew everyone's attention to himself by asking. "Wait, you claim that the entire situation was untrue?" Akunoichi said. "I don't know how this could have gotten so out of proportion, but yes, it seems to me that somebody heard something, misinterpreted it and it blew up massively," said Kakashi. Since the story Kakashi told them was now quickly going viral and it appeared that they had wasted an entire day for nothing, he decided to use Shunshin to get to the tower as quickly as possible to find out what had happened there and why Tsunade hadn't stopped it. After all, she had access to the Namikaze estate, and he had left the message from Naruto on the kitchen table. He found Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Danzo sipping sake and reviewing reports when he arrived at the Hokage's office. "Hi, Kakashi. You'll be shocked by what transpired," Jiraiya said with a smile. "I have a thought. At the gate, I overheard an intriguing tale about Naruto being abducted, which I promptly rectified," Kakashi replied. "What were you aware of?" Tsunade yelled. "How could I have predicted that the village would become alarmed when Minato-sensei took Naruto on a trip? Naruto wrote me a message, which I left on the estate's kitchen table. I assumed you would go there first if you were trying to find sensei. Don't hold it against me if you fail to see the obvious. I spent the entire day on a training ground outside the village." Kakashi defended himself by saying, "I didn't even know about this before returning 15 minutes ago." Jiraiya and Tsunade exchanged sheepish glances, and Danzo simply smiled, which was hilarious because he completely understood Minato's statement that it was beneficial to display emotions outside of combat. As you can see, we have also concluded that Naruto's kidnapping was not possible. In 30 minutes, we dispatched messengers to gather the village's shinobi. This will be presented as an unannounced simulated emergency. We apprehended 7 undercover agents in the village, so there were advantages, Danzo informed Kakashi. "I think that would be a smart tactic." All 3 of them swallowed when Kakashi said, "You can be sure he will think of some kind of payback, even though Sensei won't like the paperwork that results from this." It had taken the Uchiha's days to completely dispose of the slime he had somehow spread over the Uchiha district, and they remembered clearly the Hokage's ideas when he was distracting the villagers when he had recently been brought back to life to allow the toads to gather evidence against the traitors. With only an hour to spare, Naruto, Minato, and Kushina arrived at the Namikaze estate. Minato and Kushina took a little longer to shower together, while Naruto rushed into his room, eager to get ready for the fireworks and the official celebration for Minato. When his parents eventually came down from their bedroom, Naruto was resting on the sofa. Kushina and Minato were both dressed in kimonos, and Naruto thought his mother was the most beautiful mother he had ever seen. When he told her what he thought, she smiled and kissed him on the cheek, telling him that was very kind of him. Minato felt that many people were staring at him strangely as they left the estate and made their way to the tower, where they would watch the fireworks that would be blasted from the monument into the sky. Maybe this was because he was with Kushina. He smiled at his mother, cousin, and sensei's shocked expressions when they arrived at the tower. Indeed, this is Kushina. Since Kami-sama didn't see anything wrong with allowing her to come for a day, Naruto asked his guardian angel to send her down for my birthday, and now she is here. We spent the entire day in Moon Country together, Minato said with a radiant smile. The now exposed mock disaster drill had gone so far that there would undoubtedly be reprimands, and many people faulted the face. But why did they think the Hokage's son had been abducted? Tsunade was the first to get her act together. "I'm glad to see you again, even if it's just for today," she said, giving her daughter.in.law a hug. "Tsunade-sensei, thank you. Being here makes me very happy. With my 2 boys, it was such a wonderful day. I wish we could have more of them," she said, resolving to talk to Kami and Aohoshi about the possibility of at least occasionally visiting her family. "When will the fireworks begin, Granny?" With excitement, Naruto inquired. Tsunade gave her grandson a smile. "Naruto, soon. They should start in about 5 minutes, I believe." "Great," he exclaimed with joy. Everyone who saw them decided it would be easier to just leave it since they were all tired from today. He returned to his parents and took his mother's hand, and she smiled at him. It was easy because he himself shared Naruto's wish. Well, he would make the most of all the time they had left this night. He just needed to remember to put silencing seals around his and Naruto's bedrooms. Naruto sat on his mother's lap and watched the fireworks in wonder. He loved the colorful sparks that fell, creating pictures in the dark night sky and the sounds of explosions. He wished that his mother could stay with them, but he knew he was fortunate enough to have her back for one day. If only he had known the horror that awaited him in the paperwork he would receive the following day. In front of Kami and Aohoshi, Kushina stood. She grinned broadly and said, "Thank you so much for this opportunity, Kami-sama and Aohoshi." "Kushina, it was a pleasure for me. I'm glad your husband and son are having a great time during your visit," Kami replied before becoming serious. "I have some serious news as well. When Shinigami visited me today, he told me about some souls that irritate him a lot. Even though their time has passed, they managed to evade death. He is not amused by this, as you can imagine," Kami clarified. "Yes, I can see that he dislikes that," Kushina replied, perplexed as to why she had been informed. "Shinigami has no power over the world of the living, as you are aware, unless someone calls upon him, as Minato did. He then demands payment in the form of the other contract party's soul. If not, he assigns his aides to gather the souls of those whose time is up and bring them to him for judgment. If they receive a positive judgment, they enter my sphere. If they receive a negative judgment, they undergo a cleansing process that lasts for however long the soul has lived in Shinigami's sphere. I am the only one with the authority to send my underlings to make minor changes in the living world. For example, I designate a guardian angel for every child. Most of my angels are made up of those. However, in the event of a significant power imbalance, I also have a small regiment of warrior angels that are sent down to the world. Normally, people can handle their own problems, but this time, Shinigami has alerted me to a significant imbalance brought on by those who are evading death. 2 of the 4 powerful cheaters he has identified should be familiar to you. Others adhere to the cult of the false deity Jashin, but humans can deal with them in a normal way. Hidan of the Jashin cult, Madara Uchiha, Kakuzu of the 5 Hearts, and Orochimaru of the Sannin are the others. For those like your son, who have the Biju sealed inside of them, these 4 are particularly dangerous. You mean they're pursuing my Naruto? Concerned, Kushina inquired. According to Shinigami, 3 of them are affiliated with a terrorist group that plans to gather all the Biju for their evil ends. They're currently seeking new members. The 4th would be a strong contender for that group. I believe that in order to help the humans, I will eventually have to send some warrior angels down. Would you be interested in becoming one of my warrior angels? Sending an angel who knows the location where they are needed is always the simplest method. Is Kami-sama really necessary to ask? When can my training start? Blood-red wings appeared on Kushina's shoulders as she asked. With 2 swords in her hands, Aohoshi declared, "It starts now." She threw one to Kushina, who caught it, but had to defend herself against the other angel. Aohoshi is a unique case for an angel, in case I forgot to mention that. Kami smiled as she observed Kushina dodging a slash from the more seasoned angel, saying, "She is the only angel who is a warrior angel and a guardian angel at the same time." Naruto was seated at the Namikaze Estate's kitchen table. He was consuming a well-balanced breakfast that would provide him with energy without making him feel bloated. After all, today was a significant day. The Academy's graduation exam took place today. In the 4 years since he had first met Gaara and his siblings Temari and Kankuro, a lot had transpired. He visited the other boy and Suna twice during those years and corresponded with Gaara on a regular basis. According to what Gaara wrote and shared with him, things had begun to improve for him after the Yondaime Hokage had fixed the seal and Gaara, who didn't want to call him his father, as Naruto Dita told the Suna Council. When it was revealed that someone had tampered with the seal in a way that would have made it easy for them to remove the Shukaku, some of the older ninjas who had apparently been offended that an outsider had been permitted to view the seal stopped talking. Gaara had begun interacting with Suna's kids with the assistance of Temari and Kankuro. Naruto learned from a hilarious letter that Temari was very vocal about anyone who dared to make fun of her younger brother. They had dedicated their lives to changing the way things were done in Suna after realizing that Gaara was safe as long as he had friends who didn't despise and fear him. He was aware that Yugito and Temari had exchanged numerous letters. Since they both needed a girl who took her kunoichi training seriously, the 2 girls had kept in touch. Yugito had told him when he asked, and that was why. He and Sai had a suspicion that they were exchanging gossip via the letters. For some reason, girls enjoyed gossiping. Hinata, Mai, and Ino, their female friends, were frequently observed laughing about various topics. However, they never shared their amusement with the boys. Being a ninja at last thrilled Naruto. Yugito had repeatedly rubbed it into his face and was already chunin. That really irritated him. He could now, however, catch up to her. He was aware that specialized teams would be formed from the Ninja Academy graduates. No graduates had failed to become ninjas because of the improved training in the previous years. Much earlier, the hopeless cases had been dropped. Alternatively, they were placed in special programs if they lacked the mentality for active duty but had talent in other fields. He had vivid memories of one instance in particular. Sakura Haruno, a devoted fangirl of Sasuke, had been expelled from the regular academy program after their 3rd year. The girl had declined to participate in actual physical training. However, she had spent a great deal of time studying genjutsu and medicine. She was sent to the hospital for full-time training by her teachers. Without field missions, she would serve as a village medic. The girl had been complaining that she was no longer able to be around Sasuke, but she had finally given in to the threat of losing her ninja status altogether. Naruto simply couldn't comprehend how someone could be so naive and fixated. Her mother, after all, had been a traitor on the council. The girl might have been brainwashed from birth by her. It was feasible. Fortunately, Shizune or his grandmother took care of any injuries he sustained that weren't healed by his bloodline, so he didn't have to see her very often. After finishing his milk, he placed his cup and plate in the sink. Since it was Monday, the house would be cleaned by the regular group of genin that his father sent. He was permitted to let others clean them on Mondays, but normally he would just do it himself. No civilian employees were permitted to work on the Namikaze estate because it was a high-security area. The risk of assassins and spies was too high. Under the supervision of the Anbu that protected the property, a group of genin were given the C-rank task of cleaning the estate once a week. The significance of the estate was the only factor that made it a C-rank mission rather than a D-rank. Therefore, unlike the other D-rank missions, it was not completed by academy students. Naruto was aware that if he were assigned to a team with most of the elite, he would get along well with them. However, he had to first give his best effort on today's tests. After completing his daily routine of slinking to the academy to avoid being discovered by a group of his obstinate fangirls, Naruto arrived. Sasuke, Sai, and he had initially had to run to the academy while being pursued by groups of girls. Things had gotten easier after they had perfected stealth. Unless someone happened to spot them, they had mostly been able to slip past the groups. However, that had only occurred at the start. He approached his friends after spotting them. Since the academy's founding 6 years prior, everyone had developed significantly. The academy's top kunoichis were Mai, Ino, and Hinata. Their attire demonstrated their professional demeanor for their chosen field. With a few unique accessories, their outfits had comparable styles. Ino, who adored purple, layered a short, sleeved mesh shirt over a purple sleeveless shirt. Her ankles were bound with white bandages, and she wore long purple pants. She had her weapon pouch fastened with a light blue belt. Her two sei on either side of her hips were also secured by the belt. With her white mesh shirt and white belt, Mai's ensemble reflected Ino's preference for dark blue. A naginata was her weapon of choice, and it was fastened to her lower back for convenient access. Hinata had selected dark red pants and a black top. In addition, her mesh shirt was dark red, which would be mistaken for black in a dark environment. Her belt and bandages were both black. She used a whip that conducted chakras as her weapon. She was a formidable presence due to her Juken training. Naruto was dressed in a long, sleeved black mesh shirt and black pants. He wore a short, sleeved, dark burnt orange shirt with black stripes that resembled tigers over the mesh shirt. It was effective at camouflage. Like his big brother figure Kakashi, he also wore black fingerless gloves. He was armed with a short sword and a chakram, which was a round throwing weapon with externally sharp blades. It was extremely difficult to avoid his weapon if he directed his wind nature chakra into the chakram. For comparison, consider Zena's weapon. Sasuke was dressed entirely in black. The only color in his ensemble was the tiny Uchiha fan he carried on his right shoulder. He carried a katana on his back as his weapon of choice. Sai wore a dark green long sleeve shirt with black pants in a similar ensemble. He used a tanto as a weapon. They were all dressed in ninja sandals. They greeted each other as usual. They didn't talk much because they were all in a state of concentration before the tests began. All three classes took the graduation exams together. The day was free for the other academy students. Teachers no longer graded their students, as was customary. The Hokage and 3 elite Jonin served as exam proctors. Jiraiya of the Sanin, Shikaku Nara, the Jonin commander, and Ibiki Morino, the head of ANBU's torture and interrogation unit, were the Jonin this year. Favoritism was impossible because none of the Jonin would be taking a team this year. The proctors faced the prospective graduates, who were arranged in groups of 5 each. Minato got up and started talking. As you all know, today you are going to be tested if you are ready to serve the village Konohagakure as a ninja. You have studied, trained and exercised hard to get here. You are the best of your age group. Now it is up to you to show the results of the past 6 years to us. The first exam is throwing weapons. You will be given standard kunai, shuriken and senbons, all in top condition. You will go through a course with moving and stationary targets. You will be marked at the end for accuracy, choice of weapon in different situations, usage of resources and speed. Begin, he continued. Renzo, the middle school teacher, came forward and started yelling names in alphabetical order. In other words, Shino and Choji completed the course first. Both performed admirably. 100 was the highest possible score. Shino scored 86, while Choji scored 81. As the list continued, the 3 teachers checked to make sure the students weren't using anything, including bloodlines, to cheat. Naruto was called at last. He approached the proctors, grabbed his equipment pouch, looked through its contents, and proceeded to the starting line. When he was told to start, he dashed into the course. He had spent the previous 6 years honing his ability to quickly identify targets. He possessed 40 senbons, 30 kunai, and 30 shuriken. He was aware that there wouldn't be 100 targets, but in order to receive full marks, he had to position his weapons in the middle of each target. Soon after, he hurled 2 kunai at targets farther away, and they both perfectly embedded. He was aware that kunai would be the most effective weapon for long-range targets. If you were skilled enough, you could use senbons for all ranges and shuriken for middle and short range. Since the light needles were obviously easily blown, the only other options were middle and short range. As soon as Naruto saw his targets, he immediately began to run and hurl his weapons frantically. Senbons, which were his next targets and were fired by automatic launchers concealed in the trees, then launched a counterattack, which he had to avoid. Naruto was aware that once he hit the bullseye, they would cease firing. After tending to the launchers, he continued running. He had already disabled 28 targets. He had to go from speed to stealth because the next part was an obvious trap. He saw 3 traps, 5 targets, and 1 dummy opponent while surveying the clearing. Before he stepped into the clearing, he sprung the traps with senbons. He struck the dummy in the forehead with a kunai and the targets with shuriken. After that, he kept going until he reached the finish line. Naruto Namikaze, time 7 minutes, 34 seconds. Akira made a statement, "Please give your remaining equipment to the proctor and take your place in line." Naruto followed instructions and entered the line. He was thrilled to learn that he had received full marks when his grades were announced. The next test was chakra control, which they had to show off in a course that required them to walk on water and climb trees in various settings. Neither was problematic for any of the students. It also served as a speed and agility obstacle course. A written section on battle history, tactics, survival techniques, geography, the ranking system, and poisons came next. The first aid test was then administered. That was Tsunade's insistence. Until a medic arrived to properly heal the wounds, each ninja had to be able to tend to common wounds. In the field, it had proven to be a huge success. Many Konoha ninjas had been saved by the basic first aid skills, which were nothing other villages would consider basic, even though Tsunade's dream of having 1 medic on each team had not yet been realized because it took a long time to train medics who could survive in the field. Then came taijutsu bouts. 10 chunin were selected to be the students' sparring partners for this section. Each student was required to demonstrate the katas for 3 distinct taijutsu styles. 2 were of their own choosing, and 1 was the conventional academy style. They were to battle the chunin for 5 minutes after demonstrating the katas of the 3 styles. Their taijutsu mark consisted of their performance in both sections. Ninjutsu came next. They each had to exhibit 1 type of clone, transformation, and substitution. They were then required to display 3 additional jutsus of their choosing. At least one of them had to be an E-rank elemental jutsu. After that, there was a covert exercise. 3 adversaries guarded the building where they had to retrieve a scroll. The electives came next. Many participated in weapon tests, while others showcased their proficiency in advanced tool usage, medical jutsu, genjutsu, and sealing, which had been made an elective for those who wished to specialize in the field. Although the tests required a lot of the students' energy, they were eventually completed. They cheered when Minato said, "You all did very well in the exams. I am proud to announce that all of you have passed this part of the exams. Yes, your cheers are well deserved. Now you will find out your overall marks and class ranking in 1 week, together with your team placement. You know that to become genin you have to pass the last test, the team exercise. You have got to know your classmates over the last 6 years, have taken missions during the last 2 years with them inside the village." Numerous ninjas shivered at this point. The Hokage had given the academy students some very special missions that targeted the older ninjas with humiliating pranks after the mayhem they had caused on his birthday a few years prior. Because Naruto had been so difficult to stop in his missions, the past 2 years had been particularly difficult for them. As many have said, like father like son. After his birthday, Hokage-sama had had to deal with a ton of paperwork, which he truly detested. On another day, the water supply for the Aburame clan was replaced with energy drinks, and the boy had succeeded in painting the Hokage monument in broad daylight. He had also traded the food supplies for the Inuzuka dogs with some that were laced with sleeping pills. For the other ninjas, those had not been good times. He had, after all, accomplished the task without leaving any evidence that he had been present. The students had a lot of guests who wanted to know how in the world those pranks could have been pulled when the mission discussion at the academy took place later. As it turned out, Naruto, Sai, and Hinata were a very successful team. For the Aburame bugs, Sai had employed invisible ink as a vehicle for the energy drink ingredient. Ants had been persuaded by Naruto to add sleeping pills to the dog food. Both boys had painted the monument, and Hinata had been on guard for it. They simply expressed gratitude for Shikamaru's transfer to a different squad. It would have been much worse if there had been a strategic genius like him. Ultimately, His group had pilfered the entire Hyuga clan's shampoo supply from within their own compound. Naruto waited for his father to conclude his conversation with the academy's teachers regarding the delivery of their notes for tomorrow morning's team placements. He desired to spend time with his son today. With a broad smile on his face, he finally said goodbye to them and approached Naruto. "Congratulations, Naruto, I am really proud of you," said Minato. "Thanks, Dad. I am glad that everything worked out well for me. Do you know where I am in the ranking?" asked Naruto. Minato smiled and said, "Even if I did, I wouldn't tell you, that would be unfair towards the other students." "No fair," Naruto sulked. He asked, "Tough, what do you think, some celebratory ramen at Ichiraku's?" and got the answer he wanted right away from his son. All Naruto loved was ramen. Additionally, they both enjoyed occasionally indulging at Ichiraku's. As Naruto exclaimed, "Yeah, let's go, Dad." The two Namikaze men made their way to the ramen stand through the village. They went inside and met the proprietor, Tuchi Ichiraku. Minato said, "Hey Tuchi, how are you?" Naruto sighed, "Hi Tuchi." Tuchi smiled and said, "Oh, hello Hokage-sama and Naruto. What can I do for you today?" He was confident he would turn a healthy profit today. When they arrived here, both Namikaze were notorious for consuming large quantities of ramen. "I want a miso ramen, a beef ramen and then a pork ramen," said Naruto. Minato replied, "I'll start with chicken ramen, then shrimp, and finally miso." "Coming up," was Tuchi's response. With the academy's graduation exam results in front of him, Minato sat behind his desk. The prospective Jonin senseis for this year were seated across the desk. All right, so we have 45 graduates this year, and all of them did well on their exams. I believe they will be useful shinobi for our forces in the future. Now, that makes 15 new teams. The students will be paired based on their results, so we will have 5 elite teams, 5 average teams, and 5 teams trained for support duties. We will have 2 specialized teams, one for espionage training and one for tracking training. The teams will be led by Enko Mitarashi for the espionage team and Sume Inuzuka for the tracking team. Both of them have already informed me of their team preferences. Enko, you are the sensei for Masato Kuno, Tsubasa Wakashi, and Yakumo Kurama, while Sume's team is made up of Shino Aburame, Reina Nara, and Kiba Inuzuka. Both of the female Jonin gave a nod. They had provided the Hokage with a list of their team setup preferences, which included those 6. Minato began with the support teams, saying, "Now we will go over the remaining teams." At last, it was time to assign them to teams. To find out who their new teammates would be, all of the graduates were gathered in a single large classroom. At last, Akira and Renzo entered the room to begin the team placements. "Good morning, everyone. You have worked hard over the past 6 years, and we are very proud of all of your exam results. Before we move on to the team placements and you get to meet your Jonin senseis, we will announce the top 5 students of your year. We just wanted to say that this year's results for the top male and top female students were extremely close, with only a few points separating the top and second best students in those areas. Enough of this. Shino Aburame came in 5th overall, followed by Mai Nakasawa in 4th, Hinata Hyuga in 3rd, Sasuke Uchiha in 2nd, and Naruto Namikaze in 1st, earning him Rookie of the Year. Naruto gave Sai a high five and cheered. He had defeated Sasuke in the academy's last tournament. Sasuke smiled and said, "Well, I just have to beat him making Chunin." He could live with those outcomes. He was aware that Naruto and he shared a lot of power and skill. One of them had to have won Rookie of the Year. "We will take care of that, Sasuke," Naruto said politely. "For everybody else, the exact ranking has been sent to your homes already. Now we will continue with the team assignments. There are 2 specialized teams. Team 1 is a tracking team under Sume Inuzuka, consisting of Shino Aburame, Reina Nara and Kiba Inuzuka. Team 2 is an espionage team under Enko Mitarashi, consisting of Yakumo Kurama, Masato Kuno and Tsubasa Wakashi. Team 3 under Genma Shiranuie. Renzo continued to read about the teams. Team 13 under Itachi Uchiha, Kurenai Yuhi, Wataru Ikonama, Minami Akamichi, and Taro Yakato. Caused some rumblings because Itachi was well known in the village. Sasuke Uchiha, Mai Nakasawa and Shinji Oritate. Team 14 under Asuma Sarutobi, Shikamaru Nara, Shoji Akamichi and Ino Yamanaka, and Team 15 under Kakashi Hitaki, Hinata Hyuga, Sai and Naruto Namikaze. Naruto was content. His sensei was his big brother, and 2 of his closest friends were on his team. It was only fitting that Kakashi would be managing a highly adaptable team. Sai was a long-range ninjutsu and genjutsu user. Hinata tended toward taijutsu with a secondary specialty in medical jutsu, and Naruto, with his large reserves, was ideal for being a ninjutsu specialist. They had a well-balanced team. Outside the academy, Naruto, Sai, and Hinata sat in the shadows beneath the tree. Even though Kakashi was one of the best ninjas in the village, they all knew that he continued to arrive late in honor of his best friend Obito Uchiha, who had passed away. At least he kept it to 30 minutes. Naruto learned from his father that earlier, when he thought he had lost everyone he held dear, things had been worse. Sai remarked, he should arrive in 10 the remaining minutes. Hinata said, yes, we should go inside. Naruto said, okay. The three then returned to their classroom. They took their seats and bided their time until Kakashi arrived. He gave them one of his signature eye smiles and showed up precisely 1 hour past the scheduled time. He said, hello my cute little genin. They all knew Kakashi well, so they said, hi Kakashi. No, from now on you will have to call me Kakashi-sensei when we are training or on missions. We can't ignore protocol, he warned. Despite rolling their eyes, they acknowledged his correctness. So where do you want to give us the teamwork test Kakashi-sensei? Sai responded. He disappeared in a shunshin after saying, I have reserved training ground 3 this afternoon, we will go right there. I really need to get him to teach me that jutsu, said Naruto. For the past 2 years, he had been requesting that Kakashi teach him shunshin, but he had consistently responded that he would learn it after graduating. Now, he would have to fulfill his commitment. 5 minutes after leaving the academy, the three made their way to the training ground via the route that went over the roofs. Kakashi was taking their time, they discovered. He wrote down the time and his remarks, saying, 4 minutes, 53 seconds, not bad for the first time with basic training. And you came as a team in formation, good. For the team exercise, Danzo had suggested using time and behavior measurements for each group. The Genin-to-be were all aware that they would be put to the test in terms of teamwork, so the Jonins had to use small things to ensure that their teams truly grasped the concept. With a serious expression, Kakashi said, okay, you know what this is about. The person who will be nodded. He showed them 2 silver bells and said, your mission is to take these bells from me. In the past, the Genin would have had to come to the conclusion that in order to obtain the bells, they needed to launch a coordinated attack. The team would be passed by their sensei if they demonstrated that they understood teamwork, if not, they would have to return to the academy. However, for the past 2 years, all academy graduates have been drilled in teamwork exercises and missions. The village benefited greatly from the D-rank missions being taken over by the academy students of the previous 2 years. Genins had frequently grumbled about having to perform village chores and receiving no exciting missions prior to Minato's return to his position as Hokage. Tora the cat had been the most intriguing mission, but the cat had avoided escaping too frequently after Naruto persuaded the fire daimyo's wife that she needed to treat Tora kinder. Since Tora occasionally made the decision to visit Naruto, the daimyo would typically simply send an inquiry if the cat was missing and had been spotted at the Namikaze estate. For practice, the Genins now have low-level C ranks. The Genin left the village for them most of the time, and they were a little more interesting. Through their missions, the young ninjas were able to establish contacts in other villages and gain a better understanding of the elemental countries. You have 4 hours, until the alarm sounds, to get them from me. Everything you ever learned is allowed. To beat me, you have to come at me with the intent to kill. The only restriction for you and me is that nobody can leave the training ground before the alarm sounds. Kakashi clarified and the pupils gave serious nods. He said, okay, start, and disappeared in a cloud of smoke from where he had been. As usual, Naruto assumed leadership of the team after they were paired up at the academy. Okay, we need a plan. First we need to find him. Hinata, could you look for him with your Byakugan? He inquired. She answered, sure thing Naruto. Byakugan. I can't definitely say where he is. There are 3 hits, from the things I see. At least 2 of them are shadow clones of Kakashi-sensei. I can't distinguish between shadow clones and the real one as they all have chakra systems. He could also hide underground. My Byakugan only can see a small area underground, she told her fellow teammates. Alright, we need to plan this without Kakashi-sensei overhearing us. Where would you say is the best place to plan how we take him on? Replied Naruto. Difficult. Even if we manage to get away from the original, with the shadow clones he will always know what we plan if they get close enough to us. He has enhanced senses from his training with dogs. Sai offered his thoughts. There is only one place that we could be absolutely sure that he can't overhear us, the air. Said Naruto. Sai, Can you draw a huge bird that can take us high enough that we can talk undisturbed? Sai swiftly drew a bird and enlarged it using his jutsu after confirming, no problem. Sai, Hinata, and Naruto ascended the bird and launched themselves into the sky. Kakashi had observed his pupils to gain insight into their intentions. Pacing to the surface, he had concealed himself underground with a listening device. Not bad, they have realized that any plan they could come up with would be useless if I knew it beforehand. And I really can't listen to them in the air, especially as Naruto is a wind elemental and can divert the sound of their conversation from me. After all, that was the wind jutsu he presented for his graduation exam. Kakashi thought, this is going to be fun. The three of them were strategizing in the air. Hinata replied, okay, I can find him and his clones no problem. But we still need to trick him. Do you think he would use his Sharingan in the test? I don't think so, that would be overkill. After all, we are just genin and he normally only uses the Sharingan against strong opponents as it costs him a lot of chakra. And he only wants to see if we can efficiently come up with a plan to take him out while showing teamwork. Naruto replied. What do you think about me placing as many ink animals around the training ground as possible? The small ones don't take much chakra from me and I could both spy on and trap Kakashi-sensei with them. While my animals provide a distraction, we could prepare better traps around the training ground, Sai put forward. Given that Naruto was regarded as one of Konoha's top trap builders, it was a wise strategy. The issue was that Kakashi was aware of it. Normally that would work, Sai, but Kakashi is special. He knows me and my strengths and weaknesses too well. After all, he taught me a lot of my abilities. We need to think outside the box. Naruto, do you have any seals that would work as a trap with you? I mean those that create a barrier field? Replied Hinata. He said, yes I do. What did you think of? Well, if Kakashi-sensei doesn't use his Sharingan, he would probably overlook well-hidden seal tags if we produce enough of a distraction. Once we have him trapped, we can get the bells. She offered. That could work. He just mustn't notice that I place those seal tags or he would be able to easily avoid the trap. So it would be best if I set up one of my special traps to distract him from the true trap. Okay. Naruto started grinning wickedly. Sai and Hinata grinned as well. They were familiar with Naruto's smile. The Hokage loved to smile when he was on one of his pranking missions, especially if some of his ninjas had irritated him once more. Kakashi would be unaware of the impact. Everything was prepared after 3.5 hours. 3 shadow clones of Kakashi were killed, several dozen Naruto clones were killed, and 3 distraction attempts were made. In an effort to help Sai and Hinata outsmart Kakashi, Naruto had created a number of shadow clones. They were all aware that they needed Kakashi to fail to see the final aspect of their scheme. That man examined not just the underside but also the layer underneath it. He was likely one of Konoha's strongest ninjas at the time and the reason he was still alive. At last, they guided Kakashi toward Naruto's trap labyrinth, as he had named it. Paint bombs, glue fields, kunai, shuriken, and senbon's launchers, wire traps, seal tags going off, small explosives to entice Kakashi into the next trap, and finally the actual trap of the seal barrier field made it a masterpiece. Kakashi was occupied in the trap field, avoiding all of Naruto's suggestions on how to capture an opponent, as they had hoped. As he tried to dodge in the trap field, Kakashi developed a whole new respect for the academy teachers. They had spent 6 years dealing with Naruto, after all. Additionally, he acknowledged that Shikamaru Nara had influenced some of Naruto's traps. Because of their clever design, Kakashi was certain that no one lower than a high Jonin could possibly avoid all of the traps. Naruto demonstrated a very high level of skill during the test. They had done a great job together to get him into this field, and the 3 of them would definitely be passed. He vowed to complain to his sensei about giving Naruto too much pocket money to purchase prank items after being doused with yellow paint. He added the sealing lessons to his list after attempting to replace it with a log. A brand new set of sealing tags had been placed where the log had been, and they were activated as soon as they saw his chakra from the jutsu. It was impossible to avoid or deflect all of the sharp metal objects that were thrown at him, so he had to take some hits from senbons. The boy simply had to go too far. How he managed to get so many weapons sealed in his tags was a question he had to ask. Once more, he had to escape the trap by using substitution. He picked a log farther away because he thought all the logs near him would be traps, only to discover that he had once again played into the hands of his students. He heard Naruto's voice after being thrown into the air by an explosive tag as soon as he touched down. Activate, he announced. Kakashi became immobilized after being thrown into the air inside a red field. He attempted to exit, but for some reason his connection to the outside world was severed. With pride, Naruto said, "Gotcha, Kakashi-sensei. Don't try to escape. That seal is one of the new ones Dad helped me develop last week. The only way to disable it is from the outside. And as you don't have contact to the ground, you can't use the mole jutsu to escape as well. Deeply impressed, Kakashi questioned, you may have caught me, but how will you get the bells? Sai held up the bells and said, oh, you mean these bells, Kakashi-sensei? Kakashi located the bells by grabbing at his belt. Kakashi grinned and said, nice try, Sai, but those obviously are fakes you produced with your jutsu. Hinata laughed and said, maybe you want to reconsider that statement, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi noticed the bells melting into ink when he glanced at his belt once more. His question was, but when? I had some of my ink animals hidden in the trap field. We knew you would be too busy dodging all of Naruto's traps to concentrate on the bells. One of them took the originals while you were in the weapon launching trap and one put the fakes onto your belt, as we were aware that you would notice if they were gone. After all, you didn't say that you couldn't get them back before the test was over. You only told us that we had to get them from you before the time was up, Sai clarified. That's the reason we had you go through the trap field that would get you to substitute to the position the final trap was placed. With my Byakugan I observed our moves in the trap field to be sure when you would be in position to capture you. And I also know that we got all your shadow clones. There is no one left to get you out of the trap. Hinata continued. Kakashi took great pride in his squad. Even though he was outwitted by 3 new genin, it was still embarrassing. The fact that he hadn't gone all out against them, however, gave him comfort. They had performed admirably and demonstrated their abilities. To the applause of his new team, Kakashi said, okay, you 3 pass, now please let me out of here. In the Hokage's office, Kakashi met the other Jonin senseis. Minato commanded, good, everybody is here, report. Sume began by serving as Team 1's sensei. She stated, Team 1 passed. I gave them a test to track Kuromaru down on the training ground, while doing interference with their senses and stating low-level attacks. I designed the test as if Kuromaru was an enemy spy who tried to get away with important information and his partner was trying to buy him time to escape. They managed to nearly stop Kuromaru before he passed the finish line, but failed by hair's breadth. Nonetheless, they came up with a sound strategy and worked flawlessly as a team. The next to report was Anko. Team 2 passed. I had them spy on Team 15 during their test and had them report everything they saw in detail. I also watched the test Kakashi gave his team and my only comment is, your son is positively crazy Hokage-sama and I want one of his weapon traps for myself. Well, back to my team, she said as her fellow teammates looked on. Yakumo cloaked her team into a genjutsu to hide them from being discovered by Team 15 and the 3 used the spying techniques they learned in the academy to great efficiency to put together a detailed report on Team 15. I have the report here for you to see, Hokage-sama. Anko replied, presenting the report that her genin produced. Minato had to suppress his laughter as he read the report's contents. His son sounded like that. Kakashi, poor guy. Teams 3 through 11 senseis reported. Team 9's sensei put them on probation. He had noticed underlying tension between the 2 men on his team and wanted to observe them for a little while longer to see if they would continue to work together. However, they passed because they demonstrated that they could set aside their challenges for the test. Minato gave a nod. He was aware that the teams weren't always at their best, but he couldn't make every team flawless. Kurenai took a step forward. Team 12 passed. They showed great teamwork and have a lot of promise to become a team suited for support and information gathering. They were tasked to gather information about the director of the Konoha Bank and not to be detected. They managed to find out many things that are known to the public of Konoha and even got his address by sneaking into his office in the bank. This leads me to my recommendation to increase the security at the bank. With a nod, Minato jotted down the recommendation on his notepad. The teamwork tests were his favorite. Since the genin knew what was expected of them, the Jonins had to be inventive in their tests, which always forced the people of Konoha to increase their security against invaders. Itachi came next. To train his brother's team, he had requested to leave Anbu. Minato believed Itachi was the ideal candidate to train his brother because Sasuke demonstrated a lot of promise in using his Sharingan, but he didn't want him to rely on his eyes. Itachi stated, Team 13 passed. I had them locate and subdue me on the training ground. They worked as a functional unit and while they couldn't subdue me, they managed to constantly locate me. They used the strengths of all the members of the team well. Everyone was accustomed to Itachi reporting in a cool, collected manner. He only became less professional when he was with Sasuke and not on duty. Asuma came next. Team 14 passed. The 3 worked together really well and Shikamaru might become better at developing strategies as Shikaku in a few years. My test was to capture me at the training grounds. Ino and Choji herded me into a trap where I was distracted by being forced to dodge many weapons. By the way, Anko, I think Naruto gave Shikamaru some of his weapon seals, which enabled Shikamaru to catch me with his shadow jutsu. Choji held me while Ino tied me up. Numerous Jonin gave a nod. That sounded like the Ino, Shika, Sho team's next successful generation. Last was Kakashi. Team 15 passed, and as Anko saw fit to spy on my test, you have a full report of my team's test, which means I don't need to tell it again. Kakashi smiled. He was so embarrassed that he did not want to report it. Yes, there is no need to tell Kakashi, as I have it all on tape. You didn't really think I would miss my son's teamwork test, did you, Kakashi? Minato laughed. Kakashi's head lowered. He responded, no sensei. That's good, and I think it would be a good demonstration of their skills if we watched it together. All of the Jonin were able to watch Team 15's test after Minato turned on the replay feature on the crystal ball on his desk. At times, he simply enjoyed embarrassing his former pupil. By the end, they were either giggling at Kakashi or expressing respect for the three Genin's concepts. Okay, I think this concludes the meeting. Train your new teams well. As you all know, Konoha is hosting the Chunin exams in 8 months. The next ones in 2 months are held by Iwa. I expect for the ones held in Konoha to present the best image possible to our clients. None of your teams will be allowed to participate in Iwa as it is too soon. But if your Genin teams show their abilities during training and missions to your satisfaction, I will allow them to enter the ones in Konoha. The Jonin gave a nod. They would diligently train their teams in the lead, up to the Chunin exams. Having the exams in their village was an honor, and it was expected that the hosting village would try its hardest to win over customers in order to acquire numerous missions. Swords in their hands, 2 women were running at one another. They were both breathing heavily and perspiring, which suggested that their training had been difficult. Another woman sat on a white marble throne next to them, watching them fight. The body armor of one of the fighters was red, while the other was blue. With their wings proudly displayed at their backs, both women were easily identifiable as angels. Additionally, their wings allowed them to employ methods that most people would consider impossible. They moved with more than impressive agility. That's enough, the woman seated on the throne exclaimed. Both angels knelt before the throne, their swords sheathed. I am really happy at your display of skills, Aohoshi and Kushina. From my informants on Earth, I know that one of your targets, Orochimaru to be precise, will make his move soon, Kushina. Your positive results on the missions you have already done made me decide to send you down now to prepare for his strike that will come within the next year. Remember that even if he isn't immortal like those Jashin-worshipping bastards, he is more skilled than them. With courtesy, Kushina replied, of course, Kami-sama. With hope, she inquired, am I allowed to contact my husband and son? Yes, you are. In fact, we want you to ask Minato to share his information about Orochimaru and his plans with you to better prepare everybody for the task. Kami replied with a grin. Kushina joyfully said, thank you, Kami-sama. She would get to see her family once more, and for a longer period of time this time. When Kakashi arrived at the training grounds, Naruto, Hinata, and Sai were already there. Today, they would embark on their first C-rank mission. They were all prepared for this, having packed their supplies. In order to obtain authorization to leave the village on a mission, they had completed 2 weeks of intense training. Since the Jonin senseis typically trained their teams for at least 4 weeks, this was a great time to do it. Although they were aware that, as a new team, they would only receive a low C rank, it was still far better than the D ranks they had earned at the academy. Sai inquired, what do you think we will be doing? Probably some kind of transport mission. Yugito said that was what she and her team mostly got in the beginning, Naruto replied. No matter what it will be nice to get a real mission finally. I'm just glad that with the new system we don't have to do D ranks after graduating anymore. Father told me about them and it never made sense to me that Genin should do chores only to build teamwork. Hinata continued. Well, thanks to Dad that isn't the case anymore. Perhaps we get an easy protection mission soon. Naruto thought about it. Good morning, team. Kakashi's voice reached them. They turned to face their sensei and replied, good morning, Kakashi-sensei. I see you are ready for the mission. Let's head to the tower, Kakashi said. After following their sensei, the 3 kids stood beside him in the mission office. Minato remarked, Team 15. You are really early getting a C rank. Kakashi said, they are ready, sensei. I don't doubt it. Your mission is getting the last shipment of supplies for our hospital from T-Country. The ship arrives tomorrow at 10 in the morning. Kakashi, you will check the delivery and seal the things in storage scrolls. The hospital needs the supplies fast, so go at full speed, said Minato. Kakashi took the scroll and said, "Understood. Captain Muramau again? I didn't see him since I was a Chunin." Minato smiled and said, "Yes, the old sailor is still working for us. Give him my best wishes." According to Kakashi, "I will sensei." Minato looked at each of the young genin and said, "Naruto, Hinata, Sai, I expect a good performance from you on this mission." They both responded simultaneously, "We will, Hokage-sama, Dad." Minato dismissed them with a smile and a nod. All he could hope for was a successful outcome. However, Kakashi was S-ranked and all three were powerful. He was the sensei of this team for a reason. If they happened to come across them, no sane person would dare attack them. Behind Kakashi, who led the way to T-Country, Naruto, Hinata, and Sai formed a rehearsed formation. Even though two rival families were vying for control of the port town where they would obtain the hospital's supplies, he told them that the political climate in the nation was stable at the moment. A month following the Chunin exams in Konoha, a traditional race was held to determine which family was in power. At shinobi speed, the trip to T-Country took roughly 6 hours. They traveled inside the nation via a path that the T-Daimyo had approved for shinobi use. It was just easier. To ensure that no one would cause them any trouble, Kakashi registered his team at the border. Despite T-Country's support for Konoha and Fire Country, protocols had to be adhered to in order to prevent tension. Kakashi allowed them to camp once they arrived in the city. With practiced ease, they did. Once more, Kakashi expressed his satisfaction with the academy's ability to prepare its students for life as shinobi. Over the course of the last 2 weeks, he had taught each of the three a new jutsu, practiced their reflexes and speed, explained the fundamentals of chakra sensing, and reviewed basic mission skills. They would be prepared for any challenge that a mission like this might present. Moreover, other shinobi did not typically target medical deliveries during peacetime. Shinobi were assigned to gather them since bandits were more likely to be interested in them. Fish that Sai had caught and rice with vegetables made up the dinner. Since he could relate to the animals, Naruto disliked hunting. At first, it had been an issue, but he was able to put up with it as long as he was not required to kill animals himself. Since he couldn't hear the fishes underwater, fishing was typically the only way he could obtain food that was once alive. He still disliked it and usually let Sai or Hinata handle that task. There were no issues between the two. Naruto took on the tasks of setting up camp or gathering wood as usual. They dispersed their camp and headed to the harbor at 9 the following morning. After waiting for the ship to arrive, they would promptly verify their delivery. Knowing that avaricious people were common in harbors, it was standard procedure. They would attempt to take portions of deliveries and swap them for inferior products. Although Minato was confident that Captain Muramau would never defraud Konoha, he was unable to provide the harbor workers with that assurance. Therefore, he made sure that a Konoha team was there when the ship entered the harbor for every new delivery. Such a mission would be easily handled by even a genin team. At last, Kakashi saw the ship approaching and alerted his students. The sailors tied the ship to the docking poles after stirring it to an anchoring spot. The captain then descended and began yelling commands at his subordinates, who promptly began to comply. The captain remarked, "Now if that isn't little Kakashi Hitaki, good to see you again." Kakashi grinned and said, "Nice to see you again too, Captain Muramau. It's been a long time." "That's true. I think you were a Chunin when I last saw you and your teammates were only genin. It must have at least been over 15 years now. How's your sensei doing? I heard he came back from the dead," Captain Muramau responded. Kakashi answered, "He is well and sends his best wishes." "Good to hear. Now let's see your team. What are their specialties? Nowadays your Konoha genin are really good. I was surprised when I met the first team that graduated under your new program. I didn't want to believe that they were fresh genin. They behaved like veteran genin ready to take the Chunin exams." The captain responded. "Sure. Well, let's do this from left to right. That's Sai and he specializes in long range ninjutsu and genjutsu. Next is Hinata Hyuga who naturally trains in Juken and also is good with medical jutsus. Last is Naruto Namikaze with a focus on ninjutsu and fuinjutsu." Kakashi introduced them and they made a polite bow. "Well, you definitely look a lot like your father, Naruto. That hair is unforgettable. I'll keep an eye and an ear out to see if you can become as famous as he is," Muramau concluded. Then Naruto said, "I will work hard on it, Captain." "I'm sure you will. Now let's get to your job. The crates are in storage room 4 Kakashi. All in all there are 17 crates this time," Captain Muramau informed them. "I also have overheard some interesting rumors. Why don't we go to your office to talk about said rumors and let my students seal up the crates? Hinata, you know what to look for," Kakashi responded. Hinata said, "Understood, Kakashi-sensei." All three nodded when Captain Muramau told them, "The storage room is on the left when you go under deck." As Kakashi and the captain headed to his office, they swiftly went down. "So what kind of rumors did you hear, Captain? You wouldn't have mentioned it if it wasn't important," Kakashi responded. "The first concerns a group of shinobi mercenaries. I heard that many villages use them for high-level missions to save money. You know, keeping high-level shinobi is costly, and this group offers a good alternative. Now only the big villages can afford to train ninjas up to A and S rank, with Konoha being the one with most S-rank ninjas in its ranks. Other villages are getting envious of your strength and will try to undermine it, probably using the mercenary group. The second one is that Wave Country could be in trouble. There has been a change in power over the shipping business by Gato of Gato Enterprises. The man is known as a ruthless businessman. It must have happened some time ago, because before we could approach Wave really easily. Nowadays they have tighter security and all business is done solely by Gato's ships. We only heard about it because others that formerly got jobs from the Wave Daimyo didn't get new contracts since a year ago," Muramau told Kakashi that. "That could be a problem. We don't need a crime lord at our borders. While Wave isn't big, it's strategically well positioned. I will tell the Hokage about this. Thank you for the information," Kakashi responded. "No problem. I'm loyal to Konoha and Fire Country. I don't fancy seeing a new war soon. It's better if conflicts can be kept to a limited dimension," Captain Muramau replied. Kakashi merely gave a nod. His sensei thought the same thing. Although ninjas were trained to fight, too many of them perished needlessly in a conflict. They had already finished sealing the delivered goods in sealing scrolls when Kakashi got back to his team. Captain Muramau invited them all to lunch, where they heard some of the stories he had told about his experiences as a sailor, particularly one that had worked for Konoha for many years. As he recounted his experiences with Kiri ninjas, pirates, the occasional Kumo ninja, and the inherent perils of the sea, the young genin listened in awe. Despite their lack of sailing knowledge, the three were enthralled with the tales. After an hour, they finally said their goodbyes to the captain and left for Konoha. With genin in Konoha, Kakashi was aware that meeting Captain Muramau was a sort of rite of passage. Catching Tora felt like he was back in his prime. Indeed, the feline had also been alive at that time. The fact that Naruto had tamed her made him very happy. You would have missed a crucial component of your training if you hadn't met Captain Muramau. Kushina was investigating the hiding place that one of Orochimaru's subordinates was reportedly using. She had been assigned by Kami-sama to pursue the snake Sannin first. The fact that the man had acquired a jutsu that prevented him from receiving his just compensation for gathering his soul after death more than irritated Shinigami-sama. Furthermore, Orochimaru ought to have already died twice. However, Kushina needed a little more information about his plans and when he would be a good time to attack him in order to kill him and drag him back to the afterlife. You weren't aware of everything that was happening on Earth, not even in Kami-sama's realm. After all, there was a reason why warrior angels were dispatched to handle the most difficult issues that the living frequently couldn't handle on their own. Not that anyone was aware of that. After all, the angels were disguised as people. This underground hideout was constructed to keep out intruders. The residents had plenty of time to halt any oncoming attack if it was spotted thanks to the lengthy, winding route to the center. Fortunately, it only took a thought to make an angel invisible. Unless someone bumped into her, she would go unnoticed if she simply suppressed her chakra. However, that was highly unlikely. It appeared that not many people lived here. She had used a special jutsu taught by Aohoshi to look into rooms, and most of them had been empty. Maybe 1 out of 50 was occupied. At the moment, this base didn't seem to be very important, but maybe the center had more information she could use. It took more than an hour to get there, during which she checked each room by touching the door and making it transparent. The base's main archive was incredibly fascinating. Without touching any of the scrolls or papers, she replicated them all using one of Kami-sama's administrative strategies. In this manner, when she had more time later, she could go through them. Procedures wouldn't be altered before it was judged necessary because no one would suspect that an enemy could possess this information. Additionally, it took time to develop robust security measures. She was unaware that Orochimaru lacked access to particularly special sealing methods. He was knowledgeable, but not nearly as much as a Namikaze or an Uzumaki. After finishing, she returned in silence to the entrance, but she stopped at a room that she had not previously noticed. She made the hasty decision to peek inside. She could see that there were 2 kids in the room through the door. A boy and a girl. They appeared terrified. She made the decision that the kids couldn't remain here with Orochimaru, the monster. However, how can it be done without frightening anyone? She was certain that the doors were equipped with alarms. Because she didn't open the doors, she was only able to get so far. She also couldn't simply glide through the walls because she wasn't an earth element. However, who said she had to be a seal mistress? A hole appeared as she hastily drew some seals on the door. Since she was carrying 2 kids and the scrolls were designed specifically to carry people in a stasis, she hurried inside, knocked the 2 kids out with a senbon to the neck, collected a sample of their blood, and placed them in sealing scrolls. Usually, it would be applied to severely injured individuals, but it also had this effect. She then placed some seals on 2 bowls that were left over and applied the extracted blood to them. The bowls changed into the 2 kids' likenesses. It would take a while for anyone to notice the difference unless they paid close attention. And that couldn't be that frequently given the condition of the kids. Maybe it would be long enough for her to make good use of the information she received. She returned through the hole, allowed it to vanish once more, and then used her invisibility jutsu to leave the base. For a long time, no one would know any better. Before she traveled to Konoha to surprise her family, she wanted to explore the next place. Kakashi reported a largely trouble-free mission back in Konoha. The only noteworthy aspect was a trio of foolish bandits who believed they could rob a Konoha team. To defend themselves, they had been inebriated. Even new genin teams from Konoha were no match for regular bandits, as the bandits usually knew by this point. The only dangerous and troublesome bandits were those who lacked ninjas. The superior Konoha teams that frequently went to deal with the bandits had significantly reduced their numbers in Fire Country over the previous 6 years. After all, what chance would they have to succeed in their careers if there were so many of them and the genin could already handle them? The response was none. However, some people were too dim to see that. After hearing the report, Minato nodded in agreement with Kakashi's description of his team's performance. Considering the circumstances, it was ideal. They had swiftly dealt with the bandits, tying them up and then sealing them in prisoner scrolls. Now that the scrolls were on his desk, Minato would either give them to Ibiki to gather information or, if they had a bounty on their heads, let Ibiki question them before giving them to the appropriate authorities to pick up the bounty. They would be given seals and sent to work in Konoha's numerous farming areas if they lacked bounties. Or the mines, for the truly malevolent. The idea that it would be more profitable to let the bandits serve out their sentences rather than keeping them incarcerated and paying for their food had come from Danzo. Minato concurred. It was not a well-known practice, particularly among civilians who were unaware of it. Only the top-ranking ninjas in the region were aware of it because it was a need.to, no base. People would begin to protest that Konoha was engaging in slavery, which was illegal long ago, but Minato disagreed. As the leader of the ninja village, he had the right to make sure they wouldn't violate the law again if they did harm to Fire Country residents, as the bandits did. And it was perfectly reasonable for them to work for a few years, depending on how serious their offense was. Those who were released never mentioned this because of Danzo's root seals. The teams pondered why they now had to apprehend every bandit alive, but they concluded it was for informational purposes. Bandits, after all, entered areas that ninjas would not typically enter. Good work, Team 15. I will make sure T and I gets us all the information these bandits have. Your payment will be transferred to your accounts. Your time for the mission was also very good considering you had to deal with them. I will remark that in your files. Minato offered praise to the group. The genin said, "Thank you, Hokage-sama, Dad." The genin bowed and departed the room after Minato said, "Okay, that's all for now. You can get a new mission in 3 days. You are dismissed. Kakashi, please stay." Kakashi said, "What did you want to talk about, sensei?" "What, can't I simply want to know more about my son's first mission outside the village?" Minato argued. "You will ask Naruto tonight when you are back at home anyway, so that can't be the reason you held me back," Kakashi responded. Minato sulked and then became serious, saying, "Ma, you're no fun, Kakashi. There have been reports about that new village in Rice Country, Otto." Kakashi stated, "What kind of reports? Nothing much. They are a new village and only a few teams have been noticed taking missions. But strangely some missing nins that went to Rice Country didn't leave again. That could mean that somebody lets missing nins stay there. As we share a border with Rice Country at the Valley of the End, I am ordering more border patrols. I am informing all the Jonin of this to avoid our genin teams getting into too much trouble." Minato clarified. "As long as we don't have better information we will keep it to increased alertness. The Chunin exams will be hosted by us next time. I suspect that Otto will apply to be allowed to participate with at least one team. I will keep my eyes open. What kind of village insignia do they use?" Kakashi responded. A musical note. For now the village will be classified as "Approach with caution, inform your students about this fact please," Minato told Kakashi. Kakashi declared, I will, sensei. Minato informed Kakashi. Okay, rest up and come over for dinner tomorrow. Weary, Kakashi asked. Who will cook? Minato shuddered at the thought of his mother Tsunade's cooking and remarked. Naruto will. Mum first wanted to, but he managed to talk her out of that idea. And you know Naruto is a fairly good cook. Kakashi said, I will be there, and walked out of the office.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.